Okay, sorry for the break in transmission. I'm wondering, okay, you know what? I will just start from the beginning again, if that makes sense, just so that, perfect, okay, just so that everyone is carried along. All right, um, let me start by correcting the issue that we had before. If you followed from the previous class in lighting, when we set our exposure compensation to 5, you will see that we have this error, and this is essentially saying that you are overexposing the scene. It gets to a point where you don't want to go beyond a certain point because it won't look realistic. And anything under 3.5, I think you are fine. Once you get into 4 and obviously beyond, you get this error. So the first correction we made, or we are making, is brought this down to 2, and I instead increased the values of the lights to match what we had before. So for the day level, simply selected the skylights and increased the intensity to 15. And for the directional lights, I increased the indirect light intensity to 10. Okay, that's the fix for that. For the mood lighting, I just basically increased the settings or the intensity for all of them. And lastly, let's do the same for the ceiling lights. As you can see, these are quite low. So I'm going to start with the spotlights. Make sure everything is set to movable, and then increase the intensity. So let me try 3 or even 4. And then let me play with the indirect lighting. So I can set to multiple values. So let me do this one separately. This is 5 and this is, okay, let me make this 5 as well. And then the rectangular lights, going to increase this to 1. Yeah, perfect. That is, we're getting there. Let me try 1.5. Indirect lighting set to 4. That's fine. Okay, so the mood lights, this one for the dining table, I want this to be part of the ceiling light. So I'm going to have it selected, right click on lighting night, and then move actors to level. And now it's with that. So have it selected. Let me also increase the indirect lighting intensity, something like 10. Increase this one to 10 as well. Maybe this one 6. All right, good. I think this works for now. By the time we start adding materials, we would adjust this accordingly. Okay, good. Let us proceed. Now, 2 things I want you guys to do is go to your project settings. That's edit, project settings. Okay, so let me explain why. The first one is, if you try going close to any mesh, you'll notice that it cuts up, it clips very before you even get too close to it. I've adjusted mine and that way I can go very close to my meshes before the camera clips it. So to adjust that or to make it work like mine, you need to go to your project settings. So that's edit, project settings, and you want to type clip. You will see near clip plane. So you want to change this value from 10, which is what it is now, to 1. You would need to also close and reopen Unreal Engine for this to take effect. So even if you change it to 1 now, you still have that clip issue. So just have that in mind. And then the second thing I want you guys to adjust is, let's search for ambient occlusion, or rather, let me see, static lighting. So type static lights, and where is it? Okay, even I haven't done it yet. We are going to disable allow static lighting. So I think I will leave this for the next class tomorrow, because this will also involve me restarting Unreal Engine, and I don't want to do that right now. But we'll have to disable this for something to work in our materials. So we'll get to that later. Okay, good. I think we are all good to go. So let me go to daytime. I think, yeah, this would be a good place to start. Now, when it comes to materials in Unreal Engine, if you have used, if you've worked in materials in 3ds Max before, it's very similar, a lot of very similar things. It works on the principle of PBR materials, which is physically based materials. So we're going to get into all of that now. Let's go to our content browser. I think in previous classes we made a folder for materials. So we're going to make our first material, going to right click and select material. For now, we can call this M_master. So M stands for material. That's the short form for materials. So once you've done that, let's double click to open, and this is our material editor. I'm just going to dock this here, close my project settings. Okay, good. Now in our material editor, we have the toolbar at the top. This is where you can, save your materials, clean your graph, do some settings that we'll get to. If let's say you zoom out, you are lost, you don't know where your node is, you can just click on home to center you back to the base node. Here we have the preview of what our material looks like. So any changes we make here, for example, if I change this to red, then it updates here. At the very top, you can see that we can also change from perspective to other modes, other view modes, but most of the time will be in perspective. You can also change from lit to unlit, other view modes as well. Some interesting ones are you can change from sphere to cylinder or a plane. The reason why you can't see this now is because the plane is directly on this line of sight. And remember, in Unreal Engine, you don't see the back end of a mesh, so you have to ensure you are looking at it from the right side. Okay, then we have cube. We have this nice shape which a lot of softwares use, and then you can actually use a mesh that is in your project. So all the ng meshes can be used, or any mesh that you've imported into your project. So for example, this armchair, and you can test the material. But most of the time, to be honest, I just leave it at the sphere, and then check the actual material, what it looks like in the viewport. Okay. So Sadiq says my FPS drops from 60 FPS to 29 whenever I turn on my interior lights, and goes back to 60. Okay, so we are going to get into optimization, but to fix that, let me just show you what to do now. You select your post-process volume, and you want to type mega. So you see mega lights. So when you turn this on, that should instantly help with your frame rate. So try it and let me see. So again, search for mega lights, enable mega lights, and then see if that works. Let me 1 second. Okay, so let me just test it on my end as well. Okay, so with my mega lights enabled, I'm running at almost 120. If I turn it off, So it comes down to about 100. So yes, it definitely helps. Definitely helps. So I'll just leave that on for now, and then let's continue. So let me know if that worked for you. Okay, so back to the material editor. So in this viewport, or this area is our graph. This is where we're going to create all our nodes to connect to the master node, which is where you can see we have the base color, we have metallic, we have specular, roughness. With all these parameters, you can create almost any material you want to. Now at the below the preview, we have the details panel. So anything you select here will show in here. So by default, if you have these nodes, the master node selected or not, it will always show in the details panel. If I bring in another node, we'll get into all of this later, whatever I select will then show the details of the other node. But by default, if nothing is selected, or if you select the master node, that's what you will see here. We have some other properties here, which I think it will be best as we proceed to show you how they work. All right. So any luck? Did that? Let me know if that worked. Okay, we move back to day level and let's begin. All right, I'm going to change this material to, or the color to white, or let's say gray. And I'm going to introduce you. Okay, one more window I forgot to show you. That is, if you go to Windows, you go to, where are you? Palettes. Yes. So every node you will need to work to make your materials are in the palettes here. And as you scroll down, you will see that some of them have shortcuts. These are very popular ones that are used a lot of the time. We're going to use some of them, or a lot of them, in today and tomorrow's session. But typically, I usually have this closed. What I do instead is, if I want to search for something, I can just right click and it brings up the same palette here. They are all collapsed, but you can search for whatever you want. All right, good. I'm glad it helped. So you can search for whatever you want and you get that here. So usually I have that collapsed, but if you want it to open, just go to Windows and Palettes and you have it there. Or you can right click and dock to the side. So anyone that works. All right, we're going to start making the materials, and it's going to be more of, as we go along, I show you more nodes so that it's we don't just spend a lot of time just making the material and not seeing it in action, if that makes any sense. So let's start with the base color. As you've seen, I can click here and change the color to whatever I want, but we want to plug in a color node into this, and that is done by adding a constant 3 vector. So I can do this by right clicking. If I search for constant, you see we have constant 2, constant 3, constant 4. So I'm just going to bring in constant and then constant 3 vector. Faster way of doing this is I press one on my key, I hold down one on my keyboard and left click. That will bring in the constant vector. If I hold down 3 on my keyboard and left click, that will bring in the constant 3 vector. So what this means basically, a constant vector is just one value. It's a scalar value. So you just have a number to put in here. So when I select this, I can also change the number here. So whatever I add here, you'll see it here as well. Now, a constant 3 vector simply means 3 values. As you can see, we have X, Y, and Z. And this gives us the color information, right? So that is what I want to plug into the base color. Okay, so I'm going to set everything to, let's say, 0.5. So we have like a gray color, and I'm going to connect this into the base color. I'm going to save the material, and to apply your materials to your static meshes, there are a few methods. First way is just to drag and drop. It's very simply drag and drop. Okay, that's one way. Another way is to select the mesh. In the details panel, you see that we have a material slot, and we apply the material. Now, some meshes have more than one. For example, this table has 3 slots, and this is because of how this was set up in 3ds Max. So as many materials as you have on an object, they will show up in Unreal Engine. So I'll have to apply it. So this is for the base, this is for the top, and the last one is for the legs. Now, I've shown you how to apply materials. There's another way to do it, and that way is important. Let's say, for example, if you want to migrate or we use this static mesh in another project. We'll get to all of those things in the very last session. So let me explain. Every static mesh, if I just select it and press Ctrl and E, it will open it up in the mesh editor as we've seen in previous classes. This is where we added our collisions. Now you see that we also have a material slot here. Now I'm going to select the master material and apply those materials here. As you can see, they've been applied. I'm going to save and close. Now when I get back to the viewport, you see that the material is already on the armchair. Now this is a good method to use if, like I said, you want to migrate or use this mesh in another project. That way, the materials you applied in the static mesh editor will follow to another project. If I select this and reset the materials, you will see that they stay as white because they are being added in the static mesh editor. But these ones, every other one that we just applied to them in the viewport, if I reset, it goes back to not having any material. Now that being said, throughout this class, we're just going to apply it in the viewport. Only if you want to, like I said, migrate or use it in another project that you would need to open this up and apply the material. Another advantage of applying in the static mesh editor is when you have instances, right? For example, I will select this one. If I press Shift and E, that will select instances. Now, I mean, I can easily just apply the same material to all of them, right? Like this, but I'm just showing you that if I open this up in the mesh editor, apply the material, again, it's applying because all the while I have it selected, right? If I deselect and I reset, it's not going to apply. So just so that you're aware of that, apply this, save, and it applies to instances. So again, that's another advantage. All right, so we've seen how to apply materials. I'm going to use this floor and this wall and ceiling as our surfaces to look at while we are working. All right, good. Let me apply it here as well. Okay, let me go back. Now we've seen base color, right? Let me bring this up here. Now the metallic node, this determines if a material is metallic or not. Now the way this works is, even though you can put in any value. Typically if you're using the PBR workflow, that's for realistic materials, your material is either non-metallic at 0 or metallic at 1. So you can see it has some sheen to it. It's not looking really, really metallic because we still have some other parameters to go through. But again, any value in between. So if I go to 0.5, for example, not like you can't use this value, but if you are going for realism, no material has, it's either your material is metallic at 0, at 1, or non-metallic at 0. So I'll set this back to 0 for now. And again, because we want to plug nodes into this, I'm going to press 1 to bring in the constant vector and plug this in. So we'll control that using this node. Now the next one is specular. By default, every material in the world in real life has some level of specularity to it, which is why by default, Unreal Engine gives every material a specular of 0.5. So it now depends on you. You might want it to be more or less. With specularity, it's either the lowest value is 0, obviously, and the highest is 1. Anything beyond 1 won't give you a realistic result. So I'm going to press hold down, press one on my keyboard and left click to bring in another constant vector and plug this in here. Now, when you make a node, by default it's always 0. So let me go to where we can see slight reflection. If I plug this in, specular completely disappears. If I change this to 1, you see that I mean, you can't really tell so much because we have to go to some other parameters. But if I increase this to 100, for example, it almost looks like metal, which should not be. So like I said, 1 should be the maximum. Now, a very important node as well is roughness. Now, this determines how smooth or rough your reflection is. So at a value of 1, I'm also going to bring in another constant vector. Now, once I plug this in, at 0 roughness, meaning that this is very smooth, as you can see, very reflective. And at a roughness of 1, it's almost like it's just diffuse color. So obviously, you can adjust this parameter. It can be any value between 0 and 1. Okay, before we go further, let's go back up. Now that we brought our roughness down to 0.2, let me make this metallic. And you can see that now it's really looking more like metal. I can make the roughness completely 0. And it's looking like a mirror or chrome ball. If I want this to look like gold, I can double click on this, change the color, yellowish orange, something like that. And we have a nice goldish material, or we want copper. So as you can see, with just these few nodes, we can make a lot of metallic materials, lots of plastic, and like paint, things like that. All right. One thing to note though is when your materials are set to metallic, specular doesn't matter anymore. So if I set the specular to 0 or set it to 1, it doesn't make a difference. That is when your material is metallic. Specular doesn't have any control anymore. So if you want to make your materials like plastic or rubber, set metallic to 0, and then you can adjust the specular value. So I'm going to save this. And so as you can see, very interesting looking. Now, I want to introduce you to something else, or two new concepts, which are parameters and material instances. And you'll see why they're powerful and why you should use them. So the first of all, when making any change, so let's say I want to set this back to white. I think this will change it back to black. So let me double click, change it to white. Now to see these changes in the viewport, I need to click apply, or I need to save the material. So I'm going to apply, and that changes it. If I want this to be a little bit rougher, I'll increase the roughness to, let's say, 0.3, apply. Now, this can get very cumbersome very fast, especially when you have a very large material. I mean, it took like a second or two to apply and load. By the time this gets bigger with more nodes, it could take 5-10 seconds for every change, and that can really slow down the workflow. So to work better, and the way Unreal Engine is designed to work, it's best we use material instances. And to show you how that works, or before we even create a material instance, they are what's the best way to put it? You have to use parameters. Okay, so let me explain. I'll simply right click on this and convert this to a parameter. I'm going to use the same name as what I plugged it into. So I'll call this base color. Okay, I'm going to convert this to a parameter as well. Call this metallic. Now if I want to be faster, I'll delete these two. I can right click on this pin and promote to parameter, and it's already give me the name I want, or the name of the node itself. Right click, promote to parameter, and there we go. Okay, before we go into any major setting, I'm going to close this, or rather save. I'm going to dock this. Then I'm going to right click and create a material instance. I'll call this mi underscore, for now I'll just say tests. Call this test, and I'm going to apply this to these three materials. Okay, so time for another trick or quick tip. Now I have just three materials or three meshes that I want to change the material to this test, so I can easily select three of them and drag and drop. But let's say you had 40, 50, 60 meshes scattered all over your scene and you want to select them quickly. The first way of doing that is to right click on the material. You will see asset actions and you see select actors using this asset. So once I do that, that will select those three assets, and then I can actually there are more, the chair as well, but let me see, 11 objects. Okay, let me see. Yeah, we also have it applied to this one, to this as well. So um that's interesting. Outliner. Okay, all right. So the reason why what I wanted to show you wasn't going to work is because some of these meshes were brought in via Datasmith, right? And Datasmith has the top node needs to be deselected. So this is what I wanted to show you guys. With all the 11 materials or 10 objects selected, I can then go back to the content browser and simply replace all the materials. So everything now is now using the material instance. So let me now show you the power of material instance. I'll double click to open it. Let me dock it down here. Now these are the parameters that we've made: metallic, roughness, specular, base color. Now as you can see, the material instance looks a bit different from the master material. First of all, we have a very big preview window, and on the right side you're only going to see the parameters that you created in the master material. So essentially, we're going to create a master material which will hold all the parameters for any kind of material we want to make, and then we'll make many material instances for all the materials we want to use in our project. So that's the workflow essentially. So now I can click on base color, change the color, and as you can see, it's updating real time. I don't have to apply or save, and this is also good for your performance. You don't want Unreal Engine to be loading a large master material every time you're moving around, but with material instances, it's very good for your performance. So I can change the color in real time. I can increase, let me make this much darker. I can increase the specular in real time. I can adjust the roughness, and I can make it metallic or not. So that's the power of material instance. So moving forward, we are going to have this material instance on our static meshes, and then we'll keep on making changes and adding more to the master material and seeing what it looks like in the material instance. So I'll just have these two always docked here while we continue. Okay, what next? The next one I want us to look at is the emissive color. So again, because this is a color, I want to use a constant 3 vector to control this. Now I can just again right click, promote to parameter, and it gives us the name emissive color. Let me see, by default it's going to be black, so there's no emission or emissive properties on it. I will simply double click and increase, and there's a slight blue emission from the light. Now the reason why it's looking a bit weird is because I think this would be a good time to introduce some more new things. If I go back to the master node, you see that we have three things here. We have material domain, we have blend node, and we have shading model. Now for all the materials we're going to make today, we're going to be using surface, so we're not going to touch this. But when it comes to blend mode and shading model, we're going to adjust some of these depending on what we are making. Now for any opaque material, wood, stone, the walls, everything, we'll leave the blend mode at opaque. But when we want to make glass, we're going to change this to translucent gray. But what I want to show you right now is the shading model. Again, by default, most of what we're going to make will be using the default lit shading model. But if you want something to only have lighting information, we'll change this to unlit. And as you see, almost everything on the master node is grayed out, except for the emission color and some other parameters. So this way, you really see the effect of the emission. So I can change this to any other color. Now, in terms of making this brighter, we will get to that once we start to, add more complexity to our model. But for now, I'm just showing you how this works. So I'm going to change the master node back to default lit and just bring this back down to black. So it's not giving us any emission. Let me see what next. Okay, so the normal, this is a very nice one. This is what helps to give us detail on our mesh. Now for a normal, you want to use a texture as always. And let me show you how to bring that in. To bring in your texture, you can either type texture, and what you're looking for is texture sample. By default, again, instead to black, we can go back to our project, and in the textures folder, okay, that's true, we've not imported the texture, so let us do that now. I'm going to show you different ways to do that. So first way is, okay, so let's say we have different folders here. So first way is, let me just make the first one default, open it. I can then right click, import to current folder, navigate to where my texture folder is, and I can select all of these, open. Now it's going to import everything. To take a few seconds, and it's done. Now you will get, I won't say this is a warning, but you will get a notification that says the texture normal map was imported as a normal map. All normal maps will import slightly different, so that's why you always see that notification. So just ignore it, it's doing the right thing, and I will save. So that's the way to bring in textures. A faster way, instead of having to create all the folders and bring them in one by one, I can simply select all of this and just drag it into this folder. Okay, it's going to take a while. There's an error there because I think in one of the folders, yeah, there's one of them is not a JPEG. Yeah, so I have an Affinity file there, so that's what gave the error, which is fine. Okay, so it's importing everything. Again, these are all normal maps, so just let it do its job. Okay, good. Once that is done, let's save. So it's taking a while because these are very heavy textures, and I know we are still working on materials, but because people have different system specs, we would have to touch on some optimization tips as we go along. So a lot of these textures are 4K, some are even 8K, very few are 2K. Now I decided to go overboard just to let you know that when working in Unreal Engine, most of the time, the lower your textures, obviously, the better the performance, but then you might lose some quality. So if your system can handle high, large textures, fine. If not, what we're going to do right now is how to like optimize them. So let's see. Okay, let me open one of them, for example. Let me go to the ground. Let me open the pebbles. So Now we are in the static, we are in the texture editor, lots of editors, but you get used to everything. Right now you see that we've imported this at 8K. So imported 8K, displayed 8K. And this texture is 43 MB. That's quite large. By the time you have a lot of texture like this and you package your game, the game can end up being, 2 gig, 3 gig just because of large textures. Now, if you want to optimize or reduce the texture size, what you can do is, let me see, under compression, expand advanced, and you see maximum texture size. I'm going to, so by default it's set to 0, meaning to use the maximum texture size. So now I'm going to set this to 2K, 2048, and apply or press enter, and you see that the imported is obviously the original size, but now it is displaying 2K, and now it is now down to just 2 megabytes. Now, one thing to emphasize, when you are adjusting your texture sizes, it always has to be in powers of 2. So I can't just type, for example, 4000. It won't work. You see, it set it to 4K, which is 4096. So 4096, 2048 for 2K, 1024 for 1K, 512, 256. So if I try 256, it's going to be very, not sharp at all. Now this is obviously for one texture. How do we do this for multiple? So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to the root folder that has all the textures, and I'm going to filter by texture. So it shows all the textures in this folder. So I'm just going to expand this, and we have all of them. Now I would not, again, depending on how strong your system is or your graphics card, I will advise not doing this at once for everything. You can do it in batches. So let's say take a few, right click, you want to go to asset actions, and you want to go to edit selection in property matrix. Now what we just need to do here is we come to compression, and you see maximum texture size. So you want to set this to, I think a good number would be 2K, regardless of how strong or not your system is. I think 2K is a good number to use. I'm not going to change mine. So once you set it to 2K, it will take a few seconds, then you will save, and you can do that for all your textures. Again, that is if your system is trying to catch up or follow along with this class, so you can optimize that. We'll still get to optimization where we'll cover a lot more things that we can do. So that is just for now. All right, so I'm going to carry on. I'm going to close the filter, and let's see, I'm going to go to, and in the master material I want to show you how to use the normal map. So which one should I use? Okay, so this beige wall normal map, let me open it. You see that it has this nice rough feel to it. So I want to apply that in the master material. So I'll have it selected, and I'm going to right click on the texture sample node and say click on use current texture. Okay, so we brought in the normal map, and we simply plug it here, and we can see the nice effect. Now this preview, if you want to zoom in and out, you just simply hold down your right mouse button and move the mouse up and down. That will help you zoom in and out. So that's that. Now there are many ways you can actually bring in a texture sample node. That was just one way. So let me just do it again. With nothing selected, I searched for it the first time. Now I'll hold, the shortcut is to hold T and left click, select your texture, right click, and use current texture. Okay, now a faster way is to have it already selected. Now when I press T, it will bring in that texture. Another way is you bring it in. You can always come to the details panel and search for whatever texture you want. Another way still is you can just drag the texture inside here directly. I think there's one more, but I've forgotten. But yeah, that's how to bring your textures, and I'll connect this back to the normal. Okay. Now with these 5 nodes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we are going to make 80% of all the materials in our level. The other master material we're going to make is for glass, and the other one will be for the cutting for a translucent material. Oh, actually, yeah, this will still be from the master material actually. So the other one will be for displacement for the pebbles. All right, so let's start to expand on this. One thing we want to do now is right click and convert this to a parameter as well. So we've converted this scalar value. So this is this constant vector is just one value, and it's when you have a single value, it's a scalar parameter. If you go to our material instance, you see it's already grouped. The metallic, roughness, and specular are scalar parameters. Now anything that has 3 values is a vector, and it's under vector parameter. Now when I right click on the texture sample, convert this to a parameter, and call this normal texture. Going to save. It's going to group that in texture parameter. So that is that. All right, how do we proceed with this? Okay, now the next thing we want to do is we want to have the ability to, okay, first of all, let me get a normal map that shows a little bit more. I think the pebbles, go to ground pebbles, and right click, use current texture, save. Yeah, so it's very ugly looking. Good. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to have the ability to rotate the textures. I don't know why I always look to the side. The camera is here. Rotate the textures, offset the textures, and scale. Those are very important parameters that we want to add. And the first node we need for all of that is the texture coordinates node. So again, if I search for that texture coordinates, you will see it here. The shortcut for that is U. So if I hold down U and left click, it will bring in the texture coordinates. This is the same thing as your, well, not the same thing, but I'll liken this to your UVW map in 3ds Max. So right now we have U and V tiling, which is set to 1 and 1. And what you want to do is, this can only obviously be connected to your textures. And we connect that to the UVs here. Okay. And let's use this as, okay, let me change this to the box. Now, if I double this to 2 and 2, you see that it's smaller. If I make this 0.5 and 0.5, you see that it's bigger. But you can't right click and convert this to a parameter to use in the instance material. Instead, we are going to, let me show you how to do that. Okay, okay, let me see. So there are 2 nodes we need, right? We need an append node. So I'll just search for append. This doesn't have a shortcut, so append. We want the append vector, and then we want multiply. Shortcut for that is M, multiply vector. So this append vector will help us separate the U and the V tiling. So it will make sense in a minute. I'm just going to right click, promote a parameter. I'm going to call this U underscore tiling. Promote a parameter as well, V tiling. You want to ensure that by default it's set to 1, because if I set this to 0, for example, then it's not going to work. It's going to look weird. should always be set to 1 by default. So I've done that here. Now I'm going to connect this to the multiply node and connect like so. So again, the append node helps. So let me just show you what the append node actually does. So we have a constant 3 vector, which has 3 nodes: 1, 2, 3, x, y, z. So we are bringing constant vector or 3 constant vectors, right? Let me duplicate the append node by selecting and pressing Ctrl D. I connect these two together, make another double click, Ctrl and D to duplicate. Now, by connecting these 3 together with this append node, this essentially gives you this node. And just to do a quick test, I'm going to connect this to the base color. So this essentially becomes your R, G, and B. So if I set this to 1, we get red. If I set this to 1, we get red as well. So hope that makes sense. So what we are doing with this append node is basically breaking this U and V tiling into 2 separate nodes. And the multiply node is what we can also use to either, multiply the effects positive or negatively. Now with these two as parameters, I'm going to save. And I'm going to go back to our material instance. We see that now we have U and V tiling here. So I'm going to enable them. Let me just dock this down here. And if I start scrolling, so let me type 4 and 4. So that it's much smaller. If I type 0.2, 0.2, so that's much bigger. Okay, so let's move on. One way to help you keep track of what you are doing, and I think we covered this in last week's class, is to select all these nodes and press C to comment. So I can just call this tiling. Okay, good. Now the next thing we want to adjust is rotation, how to rotate your material. And for that we need to use the custom rotator node. That one doesn't have a shortcut, so I'm just going to right click and search for custom, or just type rotator. Custom rotator. It's a very simple node. I'm going to bring this in front of tiling. So connect like this to the UVs and then connect this one here. Okay, so what we need is this rotation angle. So I'm going to right click, promote to parameter, and just name it rotation and leave it at default of 0. Now if you hover over this, it says enter values of 0 to 1. A value of 1 is equal to a 360-degree turn. So let's just see that in action. I'm going to save. Hi guys, hope it's making sense so far. Hope it's not, too much. Hope it's making sense. Let me know in the comments, or in the chat rather. So I'm going to go back to test and enable rotation, and I'll go to the cube. So if I want to rotate this, let's say 90 degrees, I will use 0.25. Oh, sorry, that's roughness. Rotation. Right? 180 degrees will be 0.5, and you know how it goes. If you want to do 45 degrees, that would be 0.125. Now, if it's a bit cumbersome or stressful, there's a way we can remedy that. Essentially, we'll just do some mathematics. We're going to divide this by 360, essentially. So what that means is I'm going to bring in the divide node. D is a shortcut. I'm going to put this here and divide by 360. All right, good. Thank you for the feedback, Sadiq. Divide by 360. So that way we've kind of like, let's say we've normalized it. So now I can drag, and I think this is just easier to, work with. So you have 0 to 360. Okay. One more thing we want to adjust. So I'll select these three, press C, and call this rotation. And the last one we want to do is we want to offset. We want to be able to offset the texture, left or right, up and down, things like that. All right. Going to bring that in front. Now, the order in which you do this is very important. Your rotation should be first, your tiling should be second, offset should be third. Think of it like in mathematics, develop BODMAS, right? BODMAS. You do your multiplication before your addition or subtraction. So the nodes we're going to use here for the offset is we're going to add. So essentially, the multiply node helps us to scale up or down. The addition helps us to move left and right. So you want to have addition after multiplication. You don't want to have your offset before tiling, if that makes any sense. So it's the same process, like in fact it's the same node, just that we're going to use add instead of multiply. So to bring in the add node, I'm going to click on add, connect like so. So everything just follows, one line. Now I can simply double click, I can select this and duplicate. That's Control and D. I'm going to change this U tiling to U offset and the V tiling to V offset. Again, we're going to use the append node and plug it like this. That's good. I'm glad to know, Sadiq. I'm glad to know. Now select these three and I'm going to name them offsets. And let's see how it works in the material instance. Now I'll enable offsets, and on the V-axis, that's up and down, I can move it left, up and down. And on the U, which is the X-axis, I can move it left and right. Great. So essentially, this is all we need for manipulating your material. Now, before we move on to other things like adding brightness, contrast, tint, and the rest, let's look at optimizing or improving on our material instance. Now, as you will see, we have a lot of instances on parameters now, and it's kind of getting a bit mixed up. You have to like really stress to see what you're looking for. For example, it will make more sense to have the tilings together, the offsets together, things like that. So let me show you how to group them or how to arrange them in the master material so that it makes sense for you in your material instance. First things first, I'm going to group all of this essentially into, so all these parameters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 into I'll call the group transform. So essentially we are transforming the texture. So to do that, I'll start with the rotation. In the group, you see that right now it's set to none. If I click on this drop down, we have nothing. So I'm going to type 0, 0, and you see why. 0, 0 underscore transform. Press enter. And for the rest, I will now click on the drop down. You will see that the one we've added is there. So I'll click on transform for all of them. Transform and transform. Going to save. Now in our material instance, you see that in transform, we have all these together. So anytime I want to transform or adjust my texture, they're all grouped in one place. Now that's one level of grouping. The next level is, okay, I've grouped them now, but I still want to, change the order in which these things are arranged. So let's say, for example, I want rotation to be first, I want the offsets to be second, and I want the tilings to be third. How do we do that? Let's go back to our master material. That can be done by the second option under group, which is sort priority. So by default, they are all set to 32. And the lower the number, the higher it is on that chain. So I want rotation to be the first, so I'll make this 0. I want offset to be next, so U to be next followed by V. So I can make this 1, but what I usually do is I like to use, I like skipping a number, just because down the line you might want to add some more parameters, and that might now involve having to come in and renumber everything if you want it to be ordered in a certain way. So it's always good to give some space, just in case of any instance of that. So I'm going to use odd numbers, even numbers only. So this will be 2, this will be 4, and then U tiling will be 6, and V tiling will be 8. Again, save, and it's arranged the way we want. So this way, it's easy for you to just look for what you want. Okay. Let's see. Let's do one more thing. Let's do one more thing. I think to make the material better. So for this tiling, right now we have the U and V tiling separately. Sometimes you might just want to scale it on both axes at the same time. So we can do that by adding another multiply node. So I'm going to duplicate this, connect like so, and we use the append nodes to basically break it down to U and V. Now I'm just going to promote this to a parameter, call this UV tiling. Again, default value should be 1. So while this will affect it on the two axes separately, this will affect it on both axes at the same time. So I'm going to, and one more thing, now that we made a new parameter, I need to first of all change this to transform, and I want this to be under U and V. So V was 8, this will be 10, and save. So enable this, going to reset this back to 1. So we have the option to scale both X and Y at the same time, or separately. So you have that option. Perfect. Okay, what next? Okay, so let's also arrange these ones into groups. So for base color, I'm going to go down this list. Essentially, I'm going to call this O1 base color. Enter. Now the reason why we are using numbers here is you see right now when I save this. So we have 0 chance from O1 base color. If I don't use those numbers, it won't be arranged the way I want, right? So that's why I'm using numbers. That will help us to arrange these ones as well. So I'm just going to arrange them based on the way they are in the master node. So metallic will be O2. Why do I keep on pressing shift? O2 underscore metallic. Specular will be O3. Thank you. Underscore specular. Roughness will be 4. And emissive will be 5. Okay, now before I continue, we are going to look at opacity. Okay, actually this will be in the for the glass material, so I wanted to bother with this now. We are also not making any material that has an opacity mask, if I'm not mistaken, but at the end of this class, or like at the very last class, I might come back and revisit this, but I'm skipping this for now. Our normal will be, so let me see, emissive is 5, normal will be 6. let me see, subsurface color, we're going to use this. So later when we add more nodes here, we're going to, adjust. So I'm going to save, and now everything is arranged properly. Perfect. So eventually when we add other parameters, they will all come in the right place. Okay, good. Going to save. Please always save your projects as often as possible. Yeah. All right. Next thing is I'm going to start with the base color. Right now we only have, okay, so let me also use, I think I'll just use wood to explain something. So I'll just drag this in here. Okay. Now the way we have set up our material, it's either only, we can also use a texture in the base color, right? Um, but we want to have the option to switch between color and texture, because sometimes you might just want to make a simple color or a simple material like gold or paint or rubber or something metallic, and you don't want a texture. But sometimes, or many times in our project, we're going to make textures. So how do we do that? Now that, I mean, you can have two different master materials, one for color materials, one for texture materials, but the good thing about making a master material is you can be very flexible. There are many things you can do so that you are making at least most of your materials from one master material. So the way to use them at the same time, or have them plugged in at the same time, is to use a parameter called so many parameters, static switch parameter. So if you just search for switch, you see static switch parameter. And the way this works, I think it's just best I demonstrate this. So I'm going to rename this parameter two ways. I can select it, press F2 to rename, or just type it in here in the details panel. So I'm going to call this use texture. So you see what this means. Use base color texture, because it's based on the base color. So that's the name. By default, it's set to false. So the way I'm going to wire this up is going to plug this into base color. You see an error because we need to plug values into this tool, so that's fine. Now by default, again, the value is off. Off is false, meaning when we make a material instance, we are always going to start with the color. If we then want to use a texture, we're going to enable this. That means it is true, and the texture sample will, come into effect. Now I've just brought in a texture node. I need to make this a parameter as well. So I'm going to right click, convert to parameter. I'm going to call this base color. Oh, you know what? Let me see. I'll rather say texture base color. Okay. Again, moving forward now, whenever we make a parameter, we'll simply just put them in the right place. So this is going to be in the base color. This one is already in base color. Good. Now this is a parameter as well. This needs to also go into the base color. Everything that connects to the base color needs to be in the right group. Now, for the rest of this class, I'm not going to bother too much with the priority in terms of how they are arranged. You can do that outside the class, and it's just to save some time as well. So I'll save, go back to my test. Now, okay, so now we're on base color. You can see that we have the base color enabled. I can change it, change the color, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I want to use the texture, I will click on use base color texture, enable this here. Now, once that happens, you see that the base color itself disappears and the texture now comes into play. I will enable this, and I can swap this with any texture I want, or I can simply have a texture selected and then apply it here. Okay, going to undo that, save. Okay, let's quickly do that for Okay, no, for the normal is fine. So typically what I do for my normals is, okay, let me see. We're still going to add normal intensity. So let me leave that for now. Let's just continue. We'll go down this line again. So the same thing we're going to do for metallic. Some materials, for some materials too, you can use textures to control what parts of it are metallic or not. So what I'm going to do is duplicate these two, Control and D to duplicate. So I will name this texture metallic, and put this into the metallic group. Now, one thing I should let you know is, for example, your base color, right, can be any texture that has any color value. But typically, when it comes to metal, roughness, metal and roughness, you need to have the textures need to be black and white. You can't have color information for your metallic and roughness values. Your normals obviously look like this, normal textures have their own look. So I can't use, I mean, not like I can't, but it will not look proper if I use a texture that has color. And because you're making a master material, you want everything to be like a default value. So typically, I don't want my master material to be metallic at the beginning. So that's why I'm using a value of 0. So to replicate that with the texture as well, we're going to use a black texture so that when we make a material instance, by default, the metallic value will be nil. So that's why in the default folder, I made a couple of textures. In yours, you won't see gradients, you can ignore it. I was testing something and I'm not going to use it. So I made a texture. I just opened Photoshop and just made a black texture, gray texture, a white texture, a mask. Even though we won't be using this in this class, I should show you, but probably not today, again, just because of time. And then normal. Now you would say that this normal texture has no information. So essentially it will give you a flat normal. And I created this using a software called Shader Map. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but essentially it's very good for creating normals from textures that you have that you don't have a normal texture. It's I'm using the pro version, but the free version will let you do a lot of things. So let me just do a very quick demonstration. Let me see. Props marble. Okay. No, let me look for something better. Let me use wood. So what you just need to do is drag in the wood texture, right? It will do some calculation. Once it's done, it will change this to a 3D object just for preview. Now this is the texture I brought in. It will create a normal texture for you. By default, it's not the best. You need to do some tweaking. Then it can create other textures, roughness, roughness, I think height map, but mostly I just use this to get normal maps for textures that I don't have, the normal. So essentially what I just did in this case is, let me go back to a new. With the white material I made, I simply brought this in and just brought the intensity down to 0, and this gives you a flat normal. So this way, for your master material, you can use a flat normal. That way you're not having the normal information on every material you make. We just have this now just for the sake of you seeing how it works. By the time we are done with this material, we're going to change this back to the flat normal map. So in that light, I'm going to select black, right click and say click on use current texture. So it's the same setup. By default, the value is false, meaning we are using the constant value to adjust the metallic properties. Then if you want to use the texture, we enable this, and then we can use the texture. So this has been moved to metallic. This is metallic. This will be moved to the metallic group as well. You know, this is those cases whereby I wish I could just fast forward myself, but we are live. I have to take it step by step. Okay, now Specular is a unique one in the sense that you typically don't use textures to adjust the specular. The more important one, or the more realistic one you want to adjust, is roughness. And if you notice, when you download textures that have different like your base color diffuse, you see roughness, you see height map, you see normals, you don't see specular. You are not supposed to use specular textures to adjust your specular. It's just going to be one value between 0 and 1. What will really give you that effect of something that looks realistic is your roughness. So I'm going to skip specular. I'm going to do the same thing for roughness. So I'm going to duplicate this. Let me rename this to texture roughness. Also move this to the interesting. Why did I make a group for specular? Okay. O3 specular, O4 was also named specular, so that was a mistake. So I'm going to change this to, let me see, change this O3 to roughness. Okay, move these ones to roughness, move this to roughness. Now you notice that once we've done that, is anyone still on specular? Okay, let's move on. So connect to roughness, connect like this. Now for the roughness value, I want the default value to be 0.5. So to have that same effect, instead of using black or white, I made a gray texture. So I'm going to right click, use current texture. So have somewhere in between. So when you make a material, you then decide to go up or go lower. Right, that's good. Emissive, the same thing. Let me move all of this down. Oops. Also add the comments. Again, duplicate. Okay, I wanted to use this. This will come in here, and then let me duplicate this. Control and D. I will name this texture. Let me see, emissive. Move this to. I'm just going to skip specular. Again, the naming just helps you to order it down. So because of time, I'm not going to bother with the numbering. So just ignore specular. Move this to. Okay, this is already on emissive. Move this one to emissive. And let's see if I've gotten everything right. Save. Okay, so have a metallic, roughness, specular. Something is wrong. So let's see. On a metallic, I want. Let's go back. See what I've done. Okay. Ah, I see. I forgot to rename these nodes as well, because it's if you don't change the names. So right now I've moved everything. All of this they are the same thing essentially, and they're all going to be in emissive. So I just simply need to rename this. So this will be use base color texture. So base color. Okay, this will be use metallic texture. Okay, this will be use roughness texture. Let me remove base. And this will be use emissive texture. Perfect. This should work now. Okay, good. So Something is still wrong. Let me go back. Okay, so they are all still, I forgot to change the groups as well. So quick fix, metallic goes to metallic, roughness goes to roughness, and goes to emissive. So the good thing is, once we are done with this master material, you're going to have this for life, and for future projects, it's just a matter of migrating this to your next project. So this is more like, a one-time thing. So I know it's taking a while to get this up and running, but moving forward, you will just use this in every other project. And anytime you want to add to this, you just keep on expanding and building your knowledge base. So that's why I'm taking the time to just go through everything step by step. Have I saved? Perfect. So now we have the metallic. We can adjust the values using the numbers. And then if I want to use a texture, enable, enable, and then we can use a texture. So the same for roughness. Specular is just going to be the constant parameter. Okay, as usual, I missed something. So this base color texture needs to be up. The use base color texture needs to go to base color. And I believe with that, everything should be looking good. All right, good, good, good. Okay, save the project. Now, what next do we want to do? A few more adjustments before we start making material instances and applying to our meshes. Now, next we want to do is we want to make some more changes or more additions. We want to do things like having the ability to increase or reduce the brightness. We want to have the ability to add tint to the texture. What else? I think there's one more. I think as we go along, I'll remember. Okay, and that will be done for the texture areas, because once it comes to color, you can always give it any color, but for the texture, brightness, yeah, saturation, that's the third one. So brightness, saturation, and now I've forgotten the third one. Let's proceed. So let's start with the simplest one, which is brightness. To do this, we need to use the multiply node. It's a very powerful node, as we've used already. So I'm going to connect this like this, and essentially by default it's going to be 1. Let me make this true so that we can see the texture in the master material. Now by default it's going to be 1. If I change this to 3, it's brighter. If I change this to 0, it's completely black. 0.3 is dark, and then 1. Typically for brightness, you won't want to go beyond like 4 or 5. Beyond that, if I type 7, for example, it starts to look, in fact, it almost turns to white, it starts to look weird. Let me try 5. Still too bright in my opinion. You lose the essence of the actual material. So 4, 3. I think 3 should be bright enough. Now, as always, we want to be able to adjust this in the material instance. So I'm going to right click, promote a parameter, and call this brightness. Underscore base color or base texture. Always good to give them unique names, because down the line we might want to use another node for another parameter for brightness, and if they both have brightness, it's only going to use one of them. That's the issue we had when I did not rename these ones. So always give it the name corresponding to the node that is being connected to. Okay, so default value should be 1. Now this is where I introduce 2 more settings that we need to add. Let me save and go to our material instance. Okay, yeah. Let me also move this to the right group, base color. So we have our brightness base texture. Can make this dark, can make this bright. Now, as you can see, I can go well beyond 5, and I can go well beyond below 0. Now, typically, I mean, that's fine, but let's be a little bit more organized. Let's put a minimum and maximum value so that it doesn't go beyond that in the sliders. So I'm going to reset this, go back to the master material. And what you want to do is when you select the parameter, at the bottom here, you have shader minimum, shader maximum. By default, it's set to 0 and 0, meaning it can go, as we've seen, there's no limits on either direction. But if you want to hard code it, minimum will still be 0, and maximum will set this to 3. Let's just say 4. You know what? Let's just say 5, because there's some materials that are quite dark that even at 5, they should still be okay. Okay, you know what? Let's use 4. So with that set, it won't affect your material here because the default value is set to 1. But I'm going to save this now. Go back to the instance. And when I drag the slider, you see that I can't go below 0. And now I can't go above 4. As you can see, 4 is terrible, but that's fine. It doesn't mean you can't type here and go beyond, but at least while you are scrolling, it just helps to, contain how it moves. So, and then when you reset, it goes back to the default value you set up in the master material. So that's for brightness, multiply node, simple. The next one we want to do is saturation. This is a bit different because it doesn't work the way you would think, and you'll see what I mean when I explain. For saturation, the node to use is called desaturation. It doesn't have a shortcut, so I'll just right click and search. You will find it in the color and utility section. It's the same thing, so anyone you choose is fine. Now, as the word implies, what we want is we want to be able to adjust. Okay, you know what? Let me just plug it and you see the effects. I'm going to plug this here, and by default, it is desaturating the color. I'm going to promote, this is what controls that. So I'm going to promote this to a parameter called desaturation. Now the problem we have is at 0, I want this to be desaturated, and at 1, I want it to be saturated, but it's working the opposite way because of obviously the node is called desaturation. So that we have two options. We can either call this desaturation 2, but a better way, because I want this to be saturation, I'm going to use a node called OneMinus. So type in OneMinus. This essentially flips, just a simple node. It flips whatever you're working on. So this is going to flip this from now. 0 will be desaturated, 1 will be saturated. And if I go beyond 1, it's more saturated. So this is the way I want this to work. Again, move this to base color. I'm also going to call this saturation base texture. Cool. So default value will be 1. Now for the minimum and maximum, minimum will be 0. Maximum can be 10. I think that's too much, but let's just see it in action. And then the last one is, I've forgotten the last one. What was the last one? Brightness, saturation, and skip my mind. Brightness, saturation. Brightness, saturation, and wow. When I remember, we'll come back to that. But let us move on. I believe I mentioned it earlier. Please, if anyone can remember, please type it in the chat. If not, when I remember, we'll come back to it. Interesting. Let me just give myself a few more seconds. Brightness, saturation, and tint. Oof. Okay. Okay. Perfect. So again, for tint, we're going to use multiply node. So I'll click on M, and we are going to use a constant 3 vector. So hold down 3 and click. So it's just basically multiplying the texture by whatever color we want. If I plug this into this now, into the B node, it's going to be black because we are multiplying by black. If I change this to white, we are back to, oops, yeah, we are back to the default color. Let me see, is that looking darker? Just my eyes. Okay, it's correct. So no, we will be doing contrast. Actually, that was a mistake. We'll be doing contrast. It's multiply. The contrast would be in a way saturation essentially. So brightness, saturation, and then tint. So I'm going to thanks for that. I'm going to right click and convert this to a parameter. I'm going to call this tint base texture. Okay. It seems like today's video is very, it feels like maybe more than a minute ahead of you guys, but anyway, it's what it is. And last but not least, I'm going to move this down to the base color. Let me ensure that this is in the base color as well. Okay, so let's see if it works. Test. So we have our brightness, which we've looked at. We have the saturation, can make it more saturated, less saturated. And then we have our tint. So let me just reset these two and enable tint. Want to add a blue tint to it. So can use this to tint or add or change the color of our wood or any material or texture slightly. So perfect, all working. I'm going to leave it at that. Save. Let me just reset some other values. All right, good. Making progress. So this is the setup for our base color. So default value will be off, which is false, meaning we'll only have the color. And then when we set it to true, it means we are using these nodes here. All right, good. Let's move on to metallic. Now, because we are using just black and white textures for this, we won't bother with tint, we won't bother with saturation. The only thing we want to adjust is the intensity or brightness. It's the same multiply node, but we're going to use we'll call it intensity. I think that makes more sense. So let's see. Oops. I'm going to drag this away, bring in the multiply node, connect like so, promote to a parameter, and call this metallic intensity. Okay, default value of 0 is fine. Again, move this to metallic, and that's that for this. Nothing to do with specular. Roughness, the same thing. So I will just duplicate this and ensure to rename accordingly. So duplicate, connect. This will be roughness intensity. And set this to roughness. And then for emissive texture, this can have color information. So we're going to use these same parameters here. Let me move this up a bit. So we want to have adjust the brightness, saturation, and tint as well. So copy, paste. That's another way instead of duplicates, but it's 2 steps. So okay, so I'm going to connect like this. Very important. I'm going to rename everything first. So tint, emissive, saturation, emissive, and then brightness, or let me say, yeah, brightness, emissive. I'm glad Tochukwu is making sense. That's good. All right. And then put them in the right group. So emissive, emissive. Unfortunately, I don't think you can't do multiple at once, can you? Oh, you can. So, but if I select 3 that are different, okay. So, okay, that's good. Emissive. And let's see if everything is arranged properly. So we have our transform up here, base color with the brightness, saturation, tint, metallic. Now you won't see those properties until you enable the texture. So let's say that it's working. So we have the intensity, that's good. For roughness, we have the intensity as well. And then for emissive, we have, okay, perfect. So let's just see some of this in action. First things first, okay, yes, I just remembered we need to do one more for the normal texture. Okay, the only, and then another thing is, remember that we plug this into the texture for the normal. Now we need to plug this UVW, this settings or transforms into every texture where you have your UVs. So anywhere you have a texture, this needs to be plugged so that everything scales together. Otherwise, only your normals will be scaling and be wondering why the diffuse or base color and other textures are not scaling. So this is the last one. Okay. Now it's not, well, I won't say it's not good. Visually, it's not nice to have, these lines like this. And I don't want to move the normal texture all the way back because we have the same issue. So what we can do in this case, you can double click on the line to create another node that you can use to adjust. So that way just makes your graph cleaner. All right, perfect. Okay. Another tip is you don't see this the labels when you zoom out very very small. I can select the comment box and enable show bubble when zoomed for 3 of them, and now when I zoom out you still see what is going on. So you don't need to, so when you zoom out you can see, what these nodes here are doing. If you want, you might want to also comment out some of these, but I think should be self-explanatory, but I'll leave that to you. Now for the normal texture, we want to just adjust the intensity. Okay, and there's a node, special node for this. I'm going to right click and search for flatten normal. So look for flatten normal. Going to connect here and then connect this to normal. Okay, and then the flatness is what we're going to use. So I'm going to right click and convert this to a parameter. So I'll call this normal intensity. Okay, now we have the same issue we had with the saturation node. I want the normal, I don't want this to have any normal information as 0, and at 1 I want it to have the default normal information. Right now we're having the reverse, so the same thing, going to bring in the OneMinus node and going to connect it like this. And now if I set this to 0, we have no normal information. Set it to 1, bring it back, and now if I set it to, let's say 4, it's much more pronounced. So okay, let's save, and let's look at one more thing we're going to adjust here. But let's go to our material instance and test a few things. So for this to look proper, I want to bring in the normal map for this wood texture. And there's a fast way to go about it. Instead of going back to your project, looking for the folder, while you're in your material instance, you can click on this icon. This will search and go straight to where that texture is, and you can easily just select the normal texture, go back to your material instance, and then enable it and apply it here. Okay, the same way we'll go back. This is the roughness map. I'm going to apply it to the roughness texture, so that way I'm going to disable metallic. Okay, good. Am I missing anything? Okay, normal intent. Okay, one more thing. Yes, normal intensity. This should go to normal group. Okay, good. So let's look at this in the viewport. Now something is weird with this with the material. Let me see. There's something I'm doing wrong. Rotation, offset. These are all correct. Tiling. Base. Specular 0.5. Okay, something is definitely wrong. Let's go back to our master material and inspect. Let me enable this to be true. Okay, so what can be the issue? Let me just also convert this to the same normal texture. Use current texture. Okay, it looks good like this. So what's the issue? So that was it apparently. Okay, that's that's fixed. So let's move on. Let's now look at the properties that we've brought in. So I'm going to dock this down here, come back here. Okay. Now for this wood floor, let's okay, one more thing. If you check the description of this video, there are textures, or rather renders, or rather screenshots that I have provided that we're going to use as a reference to guide us when we are making our material, so you can download them and follow along, or whenever you want to apply your material. So it's just to use as a reference essentially. So that's by the way. Okay, so let's start with the wooden floor. I want to just reduce the brightness ever so slightly, so 0.8. Saturation again slightly, bring it down 0.8. Now the reference is where things get interesting. If I start to increase, you see how this adjusts the roughness. So this roughness value is what can really give you a very unique and different looking wood texture. Okay, I don't want it to be this rough. I like that nice sheen. I think a value of 2.2 is okay. And the specular, obviously, you can make it very reflective. Now we need to set some boundaries for a lot of all these parameters so that we don't go overboard, and that way just prevents you from making mistakes. So no specular. Specular should not go beyond 1, honestly. So we'll go back and adjust some of that, but I think even a value of 0.5 is fine. So as you can see, when I reset it, it goes to 0, and that's because Let me move this away. Let me go to the specular. No, that's for roughness. The default value, yeah, the default value is set to 0, and it should be, sorry, which one am I looking at now? Specular. Okay, this should actually, well, this can be any value, but for the specular, default value should be 0.5, not 0. Okay. So that now, when I reset specular, where are you? Yeah. So it goes to 0.5. All right. Maybe bring this up slightly. So maybe 2.4. For the normal, if I want it to be more, I can increase it, but that looks quite ugly. I think value of 1 or 2. 1 is actually fine. So at this point, this is where you start to, make tweaks to your material. You can add tints to it. So for our master material, I would say we are mostly done for the very first section. The only thing I want to adjust now is some of the minimum and maximum value. So let's just run through that quickly. So for rotation, minimum will be 0, maximum will be 360. Don't want to go beyond that. U and V tiling, you don't ever want to go to 0 for tiling. Like I said, it would give you an error. So maybe 0.001, and maximum can be anything, to be honest, but for now we can just give it. So okay, so let me show you some nuances. With this setup like this, let me also adjust the V tiling 0.001. Let us save, and let me show you what this means for the U and V tiling. As I okay no yeah okay so as I scroll, you can see that you notice that it takes a while, or it moves at a nice constant pace, because there's no upper limit, even though yes, we have a lower limit. Once you don't set an upper limit, okay, so I think the best way is to show you. So right now there's no upper limit, so it moves nicely. Let me set this to 100, for example. So now we fixed it to 0.001 at the bottom and maximum at 100. Let me do the same for the U tiling. Save. Now because there is a fixed number, it will move much faster, because I can only move between 100 and 0.001. It might not give you the best experience. For something like tiling, I don't think there's no need adding an upper limit depending on the material you're working on. So I would just set the upper limit back to 0 for both of them. I think a better way to explain this would actually be the offset. For the offset, leaving them at 0 is fine, because that's the tiling. You are just offset. You are just moving them left and right, up and down. So it doesn't really matter if you are going positive or negative. As you can see, I'm moving it at a constant, nice speed. If I decide to, let me just do the U offset. If I decide to make this, let's say 100 units, that's the U, right? It starts to move very fast, because it's having to cover a lot of distance in this small slide bar, right? So again, for the U and V offsets, you can leave this to at 0. Okay, let's move on. Brightness, we've already set, let me move this to the side. Brightness, we've already set this to 0 and 4. I'll just bring it down to 3. Saturation, we've already done this. Your tints can be any color, so nothing to set here. Let's move down. The metallic intensity should either be 0 or 1. So 0 or 1. The roughness, in this case, as we've seen, we had a roughness of 2.4 for the floor. So if I go down, let me type 0, it's completely smooth, like no roughness at all. So we want to have a minimum value of 0, and the maximum can be, I think, anything beyond 3 or 4. Let's even say 5 can give you weird results, or no is like very rough, very rough. So two, so we should have a default value of 1, but for this floor I'm using 2.4. 2.4. Okay, and then in the master material, so a default value of 1, a maximum value of 4 or 5. And then what else? Let's move on. Brightness for the emissive. To be fair, I will rather call this intensity or even multiplier, but the naming convention is irrelevant, but just understand what it does. So yeah, 0 and 4 is fine. Saturation 2, so the same thing that applies. And then for your normal, default is 1, minimum is 0, that's no normal, and maximum, let's make it 10, even though I know that that is too much. And with this, we are done with our first master material. Congratulations. Let us begin the process of applying materials or making materials for our apartment. So, like I said, I'm going to break this class into 2 because of how long it's going to be. Let's see how it goes. If I'm going to apply the material to every single thing, or if we will do some, you guys can do some, but we'll see how it goes. So the floor is basically done. I like it the way it is, but let's do some cleanup. I'm going to go back to the materials folder. Essentially, we're going to get rid of this, or you know what, let me rename this to mi_floor. So this is the floor material. I'm going to right click, select asset actions, select actors using these assets. So it selects all the static meshes that are using this material. I'm going to deselect the floor and then reset all of this back. Okay, so the reason obviously why this is not resetting for the chairs, because we applied the material inside the material editor. So I'm going to reset it there, save, and that's gone. And I think this one's as well. Open, reset, save. Okay, let me just close the master material for now. So we'll focus on material instances. All right, cool. Let's just continue. One other thing is I'm going to, yes, actually, the master material. I'm now going to reset everything to the way I want it to be. This base color should be a white texture. So I'm going to go to the textures, default, select white, right click, use current texture. And then for the normal, I'm going to use the flat normal and then use current texture. So that way our base default master material is clean, just have white, gray, black textures. Cool. Materials. I'm also going to make a folder and call it master. This will be for the master material. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to right click, create a material instance here, and I'll call this mi for material instance underscore, let me just call this base. You see what I'm doing in a minute. Move the master in here. So anytime I want to make, sorry, let me just rename this properly. Anytime I want to make a material instance, I don't have to, right click, make a material instance, and then move it out. This will just be the base material instance. I'll just instead make a copy and make it whatever material I want. Okay, so actually, let's continue with this. I'm going to save. Now I want to start with the walls and ceilings. So I'm going to rename this to wall. And sometimes when you make new materials, it will just glitch for a minute or a second and then go back to what it's meant to look like. So I'm going to apply this to all the walls. Or a faster way, a better way is to just go to the outliner, select all the walls. This is why naming your assets properly is important. With the material selected, just drag and drop, and we have all our walls applied. This is a wood panel, that's why we can't see that. Now this is quite bright. Let us look at the parameters and see what we can adjust. I'm done with the floor for now. Okay, so base color, I'm just going to use, okay, one more thing. I need to adjust in the master material. Let's go back. By default, all these values should be false. So that we are starting with the color information before we enable textures if we need it. So I'll save. Okay. Change this back to a sphere. All right, good. So base color, enable, bring this down to, you never want your materials to be pure white. It's not realistic per se. So 0.7 should be fine for now. And there's a normal map I provided to use for the wall, which you'll find in wall, this beige T_beige wall normal map. So I'm going to enable normal and then drag this in. So we have this nice rough paint look. Just want to bring it down a little bit, so 0.5, so there's not too much. And I think the scale is fine. Let's see if I make this bigger, so type 0.5 and 0.5. Or actually, could have just used the UV tiling. 0.5. No, I think 1 is fine. From this distance, you don't even see it until you get close, so that's a nice detail. Let's see, specular at 0.5 is fine. Maybe I can just bring it down a little bit to 0.3. And that's for the wall for now. So another quick tip, again, is instead of having to look for your materials manually, I can just click on this search icon. It will take me to where that material is, so you save time having to search through your folders. So I'm going to duplicate this one, Control D, call this ceiling. Just use the same, for now, you leave that the same settings, and I want to change it later. That's why I'm making a new material. Yeah. Save. Going to press G just to hide the icons. Next, let us look at the wall panels. Now, there are two things to consider, right? I can duplicate this one now, call it whatever, open it. But then, I'll have to, it means that you're always starting from scratch for whatever material you're making, which is fine. But if you have a material that is close to, what you want to make, it's better to just duplicate that one and then make the changes, because you've already done some changes in that material. So I'm going to call this wall panel. As you can see, you can't have material with the same name. So that's why that error came up. So I'm going to open this. Maybe make this a bit smaller. Again, search. I'll click on this to go to the wood folder. And I want to use the, let me see, is it the veneer? Or this one? Can't remember which one I used, but for now, let's use Let's use this one. If it's not the one I want, I'll change it. I can't really tell from the images per se. So let's use this one. Did I close the material? I think I did. So search, open, search, and then which one did I say I was going to use? Okay, let's use this. So I'm going to drag this inside, drag the corresponding. So BC is base color, N is normal, R is roughness, AO is ambient occlusion, which we'll get into. Maybe not today, probably do that tomorrow. So dragging the corresponding roughness value or roughness map, and then the normal map. Going to save. Again, search. That will take me to where the material is, and I'll apply it to the panels. Yes, this is not the wood I want to use, so I'm going to use this one at the top here. So this for normal, and then for roughness. Yes, so it's this one. The values for the wall panel are good, basically similar to what I have on the floor, which is fine. I'm just going to save. I might want to make them slightly closer together in terms of saturation and color. So let me see. Make this less, maybe a little bit darker. So let me say 0.7, and then saturation 0.7 as well. So doesn't have to be exact. And I'm also going to apply it on the door. Okay, good. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it is the same material we have on these top cabinets. And if you are 100% sure you are going to use, it's going to be the same material, you can as well just apply it, but then we have an issue. So in 3ds Max, the way it was UV mapped is facing this direction. So I will just duplicate this, call this cabinet top, and then apply it on all of them. Now the reason why it's saying display two materials is because among these three, we have one material here and these two don't have. So you click on this to expand everything and you just apply it here. It applies to all of them. So what I'm going to do is open it and rotate this by 90 degrees. Okay, I forgot to apply it here. 90 degrees, perfect. And this brings us to another, I won't say issue, but something to always think about. Now in 3ds Max, these 1, 2, 3 were instances. To quickly know if something is an instance, you select one and press Shift and E, it will select instances. The same way with this one, select Shift and E, instances. Now the issue with instances is the materials look the same because they are instances. If I adjust, let's say the offset in one, well obviously the same materials, so it's going to adjust on all of them. So what I need to do is, because if I go back to 3ds Max and adjust the offset, because these three are instances, it's going to affect all three. And if I make them unique, it defeats the purpose of having instance static meshes. So what we are going to do is we can make an instance of an instance. So this mi underscore cabinet top, I'm going to rename it to, I'm going to put base. So this is like the base material instance. I'm going to right click. Okay, please don't crash. Thank you. I'm going to right click and create a material instance. Okay, while we are here, let me just also show you one more thing. Let me open any other material instance that we've made. So I'll open this. If you scroll down, you will see that under general, you have parent. It points to the master material that we've made. Now for this material instance that I just made, double click, it points to the material instance. So that way you know if a material is an instance of an instance. And in terms of naming convention, I would just name this mi underscore. I will remove the instance and base and just call this 1. Okay, so what I want to do in this instance is just affect the offsets for 1, 2. I'll make three copies. So we have 1. I'll duplicate 2. I will duplicate 3. So I will apply 1 to this. I will apply 2 to this. I will apply 3 to this. I'm leaving this one because this can be the base and this other 3 will be for the instances. Now I'll open the first instance. And okay, so let me also point out, in this example, right? Personally, because this amount of instances it's not going to make or break this project. It will be faster to just not make them instances, to be honest, and just adjust the UVs in Max. But again, I'm just showing you different workflows in case you have that instance where you need to do this. So that is by the way. So I'm just going to adjust the offsets for the first one a little bit. Move this up a bit. Okay, save. Second one, in fact, I'm going to rotate this 270 degrees so it goes in the opposite direction. That should even be enough. I won't need to touch the offsets. And then the third one, let me save. Where are you? 3. I'll also adjust offset a little bit. Okay, now as you can see, it looks much more unique. And this is also the power of instances. Whatever change we make in the master material, is going to affect all instances. Whatever change I make in the base instance. So for example, if I decide I want all these wood materials to have a tint, right? Because the other 3 are instances of this one, is going to affect all of them. So that's why it's always good to have instances. Everything you make at the higher level propagates down to the lower level. So let me just cancel that. Okay, moving on. It's the same wood texture for the table and chair. So I'm going to, which one should I use? Let me use the wall panel. That's this. I'm going to duplicate. Call this dining table. Okay, going to apply. And you know what? I'll just use the same for the chairs as well. So dining table and chairs. Let me undo that. Select one, Shift and E to select similar. And we have 2 materials on this, the fabric and the wood. So we'll do the fabric later. Where else do we have wood? So we have, okay, yes, console. I will also duplicate this, call this console, and just use the same for the shelves as well. Okay, with task 2 materials where we'll have the lights, so I'll leave that for now. Okay, 2 more places for, okay, actually 3. Again, for the dining, I will still use, where's the dining table? I'll use it for here as well. Okay, and then we have this is dark wood, and this table as well is dark wood. So I'm going to duplicate this, coffee table, and I'm going to use another wood texture, which is this one, this veneer. So drag and drop, drag the normal, and this is the roughness. Save, search, and apply. Now I want this to be very, very dark. So I'm going to reduce the brightness 2.1, saturation as well 2.1, even darker still 0.05, something like this. Now I want to adjust the roughness. So 0.3, or not 0.3, 3 should be fine, and maybe increase the normal as well. So make it a little bit more interesting. 3 should be fine. All right, cool. Save, and the same goes for the cabinet frame. So I'm going to duplicate this and name this cabinet frame. Oops, no space, and apply. Okay, too dark here. Let me also put on the mode lights, cabinets, make the darkness or brightness 0.1. I think that's enough. And I like the effects. Okay, good. You save. So as you can see, at this point, it's just a matter of, bringing in your textures, adjusting your brightness, saturation. At this point, it's all about, your own personal tastes. Let's make some interesting material. Let's make metal for the tap. So I'm going to duplicate the base, mi_tap. But you know what? I'll just say metal 01 because I may use it for other meshes as well. So if you're not sure if a material might be used for other things, you can just use the numeric numbering. But if you want to use that material for a specific object, then you can as well just name it that object. So metal_01. First of all, I want this to be metallic, so that's 1. Let me just apply it to the top. I want the roughness to be very low, so I have this nice effect, and essentially that is basically it. Nothing more to do here. Save. For the sink, I'll probably just name this sink. All I'll just do is increase the roughness. 0.3 should be fine. Good. Okay. I'm going to duplicate this and call this metal 02. Right now I'm just going with the flow, so I see something that I like. I'm going to apply this to the door handles. Where else? Sometimes obviously you won't know where what is what, so it's just a matter of trial and error, see what material gets applied where, and you know where to adjust. Okay, none of these will have the material I want, so let's continue. Okay. No, let me see. For now, I'm going to take this glass material. We're still going to make our own glass, so I'm going to apply that to the oven and microwave. And this grill essentially is going to be metallic. I'm going to use the metal 02. All right, let's stick with the kitchenette area. For the cabinets, it's just going to be an off-white color. So I'm going to duplicate the base, cabinet, bottom. First of all, let me just apply it to everything, including these ones. Okay, so I have the exact value I want to use. So open the material, base color. So for the H, that's 30.15 and 0.5. Okay, nice. I want this to be very reflective. So specular, set it up to 1. Roughness, bring it down to 0.2. Maybe even 0.15. Okay, and that is basically it for the cabinet. Let's now work on the backsplash, so splashback, and the countertop. I can start with a new material, or just use one of these other ones, or use the wall panel. Duplicate. So I know I want to use the marble texture, so I'll just say marble underscore 01. Marble folder. This is the one I want to use for the countertop. It's the corresponding roughness and corresponding normal. Let me just reset the brightness. So one thing you need to take note of when you are duplicating materials, just ensure that you are using the right parameters so that you don't copy settings from other materials that are not intended. Okay, apply. Let me see if I reset this back to 1. Because of the roughness map, this won't make much of a difference because this is almost a black material. But typically, marble should always be, it should not be rough per se. So that's why even at a value of 4, the difference is negligible. So that's fine. Save this. It's the same material for the table. So as you can see, we're making progress. And I'm going to duplicate this, marble 2, perfect. Go to our marble folder, and I want to use this one. So just drag in the corresponding base color, roughness, and normal maps. Settings are fine. Oops, material, and apply that to the back there. Okay. Last but not least, at least we'll come back to this later. Actually, we have 2 more to do here. So let's do the hood. I will just cabinet, duplicate mi underscore hood. I'll just make the color dark, that's all. Maybe increase the roughness, 0.2, and that's all. Let us do the hub. I'll use the marble, duplicate hub. Open kitchen folder and just drag in the hub texture. I want to reset this. I'm not using any roughness, or at least any roughness texture. I'm also not using the normal. So I can just turn these ones off. Again, search for the material, apply, and it's typically always smooth, but we can just give it a little bit of roughness. That's 0.1 is fine. And yep, that looks good. Let's see. Let's work on this painting. I would say right now we are like maybe 60% done in terms of materials. More than that actually. Okay, no. Let's work on another metal. So I'm going to duplicate this metal 03. This will be for cutting walls and some other areas. You see soon. I want it to be quite dark, and roughness of 0.3 is fine, maybe 0.25. Okay, so I'm going to apply it here, apply it here. The legs of these chairs, Shift and E to select similar, and I'm not sure if it's the second one. Okay, the second one, and I'll also apply it to the third one, or you know what, you can leave that for now. That'll be like rubber or something. These chairs have metal legs, you can't see them, but anyway, it's the second slot. This table have a metal base. Where else? I think that's enough for now. Okay, glass door have black metal, same as the two doors, so that two things will be metal. Great. All right, let's come back to the picture. I will just use the marble. Yeah, duplicate mi_picture. So I mean, this is the process. This is what it is. Duplicate, change textures, apply, refine, and move on. Where are we? Wall. So going to add the artwork here. Going to add the normal map. I did not use any. I did not create any roughness texture. So I'm going to reset, and I'm going to use just the roughness value. Search, apply. Now I want a lot of roughness, so let's say 0.65. Specular can come down a bit, so 0.25, and then I think it's fine. Let me just reduce the saturation a little bit, 0.8. Okay. Save, and let's give the picture a frame. I'll just duplicate this metal, call it frame or picture frame. And then I don't want it to be metallic, so reset back to 0, but I still want it to be dark, and I think every other parameter is the same, is okay. Let me see, I might want it darker just a little bit, so base color, bring it down a little bit. Specular can go up, and that's fine. Okay, let's now focus more on the, let me see. You know what, let's just finish with the kitchen area. I think let's just finish with the kitchen area. So the oven and microwave it's one mesh, so let's do that now. I want it to be metallic, so I'll duplicate this metal, say oven, drag and drop. Wait, okay, you know what, actually I don't want it to be metallic. No, so I will first of all rename this mi_oven body 1. I'm going to have a second one. So open, remove the metallic value, but make it darker. So if you want more, if you want to adjust this better, or like get a more refined adjustment, this is the value here, V for value. So again, okay, this is value, is here. This is saturation, that's S. This is hue to change to whatever color. So I just want black and white value. So I'm going to bring this down, say 0.005. Okay, make it less rough, so 0.15 should be fine. Now all this, I'm sure you've noticed all this like glitching and blotches. Don't worry, these are things that will adjust in the post-process volume once we're about to render, because we are still working in somewhat slow settings for lumen, so you can just ignore all those things. Okay, good. I'm going to duplicate body 2, just going to make this lighter, and it is this area here. Okay, let's go inside. We've added metal to the grill. In here, I will duplicate this material and call it oven interior, or whatever name makes sense. Apply that. Maybe just make it a little bit dark. So if I select it, we have 2 more materials left, which is the screen for the oven and the screen for the microwave. So we have, yeah, we've set up our emissive components in the master material. So let us look at that now and see how it works. I'm going to go to the base material, duplicate, call this mi_screen oven. So I'm going to open that. Base color, I want to use a texture, so enable base texture. I'm going to go to kitchen and bring in the texture for the oven. Bring it in here. I want it to be very reflective and not as rough, so 0.1 for roughness. That's fine. And for now, I'm going to search, dock this to the side, and apply it. Now, this is all good and good. What we can do to make this look nicer is we want to give it that effect like it's on, or these texts are emitting light. So just so that we see properly, I will disable or turn off the day level. Just have the mood light on, because right now you can't see that effect. So what I'm simply going to do is enable the emissive texture, and we're going to use the exact same texture. Right now it's giving white emissive because we're using a gray texture. We're going to use the exact same texture because essentially black means no emission, white means emission. So I will have it selected and I'll apply it. And as you can see, has that nice glow. I can enable the brightness and turn it off. So it's back to what it was before. I can increase the value a lot. 1 is fine. And if I want, I can give it a tint, maybe light blue or something. Depending on different machines, different. Yeah. If let's say let's say we wanted this text to have one color, maybe these symbols have another color, what would have done is would have made a separate material and color them, so that when we bring them in as a texture for the emissive part, it will emit those colors. So that's essentially how it works. But for now, I will just actually leave everything as white. So let me just reset this. Okay. Save. And then simply duplicate. Ctrl D. Call this microwave. And change the texture to microwave. So both of them. Save. Search. Search. Microwave. Apply. Let me move up. Right, perfect. Let me bring back the day level. Nice. So looking nice. Guys, so I'm having some brain fog. I want to take a 10-minute break, so please don't go anywhere. Or rather, use this time to actually just stretch your legs, relax a bit, and we'll be back. And I think we should be done with the rest in. Let me not give a time and not be able to accomplish it. But basically, we've gone a long way. Essentially, what we need to do right now is make the master material for the pebble area, which is just going to be a copy of what we've done for this one with minor changes. Then make another master material for the glass and make one slight change for the fabric, for the chair, for the sofa and armchair. And with that, and maybe one more thing, we'll be done with today's class. But I need to take a 10-minute break. I think my brain is giving me the signs that I should just take a break. So see you guys in 10 minutes and we'll continue from there. So I'm back and energized and ready to progress. So let's carry on. I want us to work on the pebbles area now. I think that would be nice to show you a new node called the displacement node. So the first thing we're going to do is go back to materials. Let's first of all make the pebble material area. Okay, to use start from a new material. So duplicate mi underscore pebbles. Going to enable the texture, roughness, and normal. Go to the ground folder. Then I'm using the pebbles. So, okay, I need to enable this first. Enable all the texture slots. Move this in here. Normal. Move this there. And the roughness. Perfect. Save. Search. And apply. Okay, good. Now with the normal effect or normal intensity, we can adjust, we can try and fake it to an extent. Let me use 2 for now. As you can see, it doesn't look bad, but where you know that it's where it starts to fall apart or the illusion of there being a bump is when you look at it in relation to the edge of the wall. Look at it like this, it actually looks good at a certain angle, but once you start to look at it from in relation to the wall, you see that okay, obviously it's being faked and it just kind of destroys that realism. Now, if your system is not strong enough, this might be where you leave it at. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but if you really want to make this look very nice, especially if you are going to maybe be doing close-ups in animations or things like that, then we would want to add a displacement. We would want to add displacement to this. So let's see how we do that. Going to go back to our master material. You will see that at the bottom here we have displacement. Now it is disabled because we need to set up something here for it to be enabled, but we are not going to do that in this material. Reason being, the moment we enable displacement, even if we don't use it, it is adding more things for Unreal Engine to calculate for this master material. And we've used this master material to create so many material instances. So it's just unnecessary baggage for Unreal Engine to deal with. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a duplicate of this master material. I'm going to call this m underscore master underscore displacement. So this is just going to be the master material for this alone. Okay, let's open it. Now there are a few things we need to set up for this to work. So selecting the material node, you want to search for what's it called? Tessellation. So it's under nanite. So I think you don't even have to scroll down too much. If I scroll down a bit, you go to nanite and you want to enable tessellation. Okay, so with that, displacement is enabled. So I'm going to save that for now and dock this over here. So just to explain what we've just done, or at least to give some more information, as I've discussed in previous classes, Lumen is the technology behind our global illumination. That's a feature that came into Unreal Engine 5, while Nanite is a technology that helps us to optimize our projects or our static meshes. We will touch that most likely tomorrow. The initial plan was to do this for next week's class, but since we're having two classes for materials, I might bring some things for the next class into tomorrow's class. So let's see how it goes. But essentially, Nanite helps us to optimize our meshes. In the past, we would need to open every mesh. Well, no, I mean, yeah, you can do it for multiple meshes, but would come in here and adjust the LOD group. Again, we'll get into all of this. This was more of a manual way to do this. But also for the displacement to work, every for the displacement to work on every mesh you want to apply it to, you need to enable Nanite on that mesh. So to do that, I'm going to go to where the mesh is. So that's Control B, or you can just search for it here in the details panel. I'm going to right click, Nanite, enable Nanite on one mesh to do some calculation, and it's done. You won't see any difference. To know if your meshes have Nanite enabled or not, you can simply go to Lit, go to Nanite visualization, and you can enable masks. So any mesh that has green will have Nanite enabled. And obviously, as you can see, we've not enabled Nanite for any of them. Remember when we were importing meshes using the FBX importer, there was an option to enable Nanite. I deliberately disabled it so that I will show you why you might still want to have control over which meshes you enable or not. While for DataSmith, it doesn't enable it by default. You would need to go in and enable it. So this is still part of optimization, but for now we need to enable it for this mesh because we want to use displacement. So I'm going to go back to lit. So we've enabled Nanite. Let's go back to our master material. We are going to do the same thing whereby we bring in a texture node, and I think that is all we need because the displacement parameters that we're going to adjust are in the material itself, which is the magnitude and center. We can't make these instances, we can't make these parameters, so I'll show you how to work with this. So I'm just going to take a black texture, duplicate this. I'm going to rename this to texture underscore displacement. We need to put it in a new group. That would be 07 displacement. And connect to displacement. I believe that is all. If I forget something, I will come back. Yeah, that's basically it. Save. Now our pebble material, we made this from the master material. So we can simply change this now to your master displacement. So if let's say for example you mistakenly make a material from the wrong master material, as long as they share similar properties, you can just change it instead of having to delete and start again from the other master material. So I've changed it, and that should give us the option for the texture displacement. So I'm going to enable that. Search for the textures. There's a displacement texture here. Going back to pebbles, and I'm going to apply it. Now you won't see any change in the material instance itself, but let me dock this. If I go to the viewport, you will see the magic that has happened. The material is really being displaced right now based on the displacement map. Okay, yes, we might want to do one more thing. So let me go back here. Let me see if multiplier will do anything. It should. I'm going to double click to move this away. I want let me see. Okay, well, let me just start from scratch. So M for multiply. Going to promote this to a parameter, intensity, displacement. Okay, default should be 1. Minimum can be 0, maximum, let's just try 5, see what that gives us. Okay, let's go back to our pebbles. Okay, good. Now, okay, I did not put in the right group. I'll do that later. So let's see. So we can adjust the displacement. If I go back to down to 0, we are back to how it was with the normal. 1 is actually too much. So maybe 0.25, 0.3, maybe 0.5. There's a little bit of stretching here, but I think overall is fine. At least you see the effect looks much more realistic. So nice. That's how you get nice displacements. Let me just bring it down just a little bit to 0.4. Okay, good. The other way we could have adjusted it actually, but I think this is actually a better method. Let me, before I forget, let me just put this in the right group. Okay, so another way we could have made those adjustments is to come down to material property overrides. So everything you are seeing, or at least most of what you are seeing here, is these properties in the master material. So let me click on so your material domain, your blend mode, shading model, two-sidedness, everything. Those are what you are seeing here. Actually, you can't change the material domain, but your blend mode and shading model, you can adjust them here. So if I scroll down, what am I searching for? Displacements. Let me just search for displacement. Yeah, so displacement scaling, we could have used this as well. So magnitude, if I try to, it brought it down. If I type 5, it goes up. But this is not, it doesn't work as well as when you're using an instance. So it's an option, but I would not bother with this because we can use our intensive multiplier here. All right, good. So save. That's our second master material done. While we are here, let's just finish up the materials here. For this grill, I'm just going to use one of the metals. This is quite dark, so I'll duplicate, make it slightly brighter. Yeah, maybe make it rougher. Good. Going to use the same material here, and then this should be soil. So let me use this wall material, duplicate, soil. Also going to have one for this. I was pointing to the wall with my hand. Also going to have one for this wall here. In the renders, it's like concrete. So I'm going to call this wall concrete. open up soil, ground, and just enable the textures, the diffuse and roughness. Drag in. So the soil itself also has a displacement texture, but I don't think there's any need because in next week's class, or maybe tomorrow, depends, we're going to paint grass on this, so you won't see that displacement, so it doesn't really matter. No point putting details where they will hardly be seen. This is the roughness, and then the normal map. Okay, intensity can be 1. Let's see how this looks. Nice. Okay, maybe just make it slightly darker. Okay. And for the concrete wall, you know what, I will just use okay, no, wall concrete. I will just duplicate this and replace the materials. As usual, search and then apply. I want to rotate, I want the lines to be vertical, so I'm going to rotate 90 degrees, and I want this to be gray, so I'm going to reduce the saturation to 0.3, make it brighter, so I'm going to set this back to 1, increase the normal to 2. I think that is fine. I'm going to use the same ceiling material for this. This is essentially the shell, if I'm not mistaken, so you can just use the same ceiling material. That's fine. Okay, so we're okay, almost done with this. Let's use the same. Okay, so we've not done the light fixtures. Okay, so I'm going to use oven body. I'm going to duplicate this, call this mi underscore light fixture. Going to use this for all the lights, so let's start with this and see. Shift E to select similar, and most likely is the first one. I think that's fine. Now the track lights, Shift E to select similar, the first one. Then the ones inside as well. Just going to use the same material. Okay, the spotlights as well. Same material. And I think I've gotten everything. I will just use this for here. I will take metal 04, maybe 03. Then O2 for this. Okay, this will be an emissive material. Okay, so for the lights, let's create the material for the lights now. There'll be two materials when we switch on the lights on and off. So for now, let's create the off. So I'm going to use the oven body 2, duplicate mi underscore light off. So this is going to be no roughness at all, not metallic, base color about grayish, tending towards white, and I think that should be fine. Let's just say it looks. Shift E to select similar, and apply. Same for these ones. It's almost like a milky, not glass per se, but you know, again, just trying to make it easy enough for us. Shift E, select similar. Maybe I'll just bring down the brightness a little bit. Yeah, I think that's better. Set the specular to 1 to be as reflective as possible. And then we're going to duplicate this and lights on. I'm going to go to emissive color. Okay, now first of all, I'm going to enable the override shading model from default lit to unlit because I only want the lighting information. Right now, none of these will work anymore. And I just want to enable emissive color, change this to tint of yellow. And as I've just noticed, I don't think we set up intensity on. I think we only use it for the texture. So we'll go back and adjust the master material. Let me just apply this now. So you might apply, or you might decide not to apply. It doesn't matter which one we use right now because eventually we're still going to, I'll show you how to swap them, but I think it just looks nicer now. So I'm going to put them on. I will leave these ones off, leave these ones on. But let's go back to the master material and add the intensity parameter for emissive. So emissive color, this is just the color. So I can simply, you know what, M for multiply. Now we have a, yeah, I don't think brightness is the right word. It does work, but let me just say multiply. And because we want to separate the names, emissive texture. So I'm going to copy this, promote to parameter, and call this multiply emissive color. Okay. Because this is black, if I leave it at default of 1, it will make it different, but let's leave it at 1 so that we don't have to always adjust two things when we want to change. Because if I change the color and the multiplier is set to 0, I'll still need to change this to 1 or increase this eventually. So default 0, maximum can be as bright as you want it to be. So I'm going to leave those limits. Now let us look at the material again. As usual, I forgot to put this in the right group. Let me do that quickly. Emissive, save. Okay, and now we have emissive multiply. So can increase this and it gets brighter. Now, the brighter the emissive material is, the more you can actually add to your, let me turn up the day level. You can actually light up your scene even though it's not the best, right? So, and again, you will never want to go this high, but let me show you how it can look nice. I'm going to select the post-process volume. We disabled bloom, right? Let me just bring it back. You can see already, let me change to 0. See how the lights just have this nice bloom to them. Let me use 1. Now as I start to increase the intensity or multiplier, you can see that we have this nice bloom. So this effect I actually want to get rid of. It wasn't actually from the bloom, it was the lens flare. This effect, you know, it's nice for day scenes, but for interior, typically want it off. So lens flare, enable intensity, turn this off. So you still have the bloom, which is a very nice effect, and the lens flare goes off. So I'm going to leave the bloom set to 1, even though default is this. The higher the bloom, obviously, the more shine you get, but it can make your interior or your space look like a fantasy project. So typically you won't want to use more than maybe 2 maximum, but I'll just use 1 for now, and press G to hide the icons, and I'm done with the lights. Put on my day level. Okay, making progress, making progress. Let us work on, okay, let's do the TV. Let's go to materials. Which one is the closest to it? I think this is metal materials. So metal 3, duplicates, mi underscore TV body. Okay, going to apply to the back. Can leave it as metallic, that's fine. Duplicates, TV screen. So I'm going to make some adjustments. Not metallic, but much darker and less rough. All right. What's next? Let's do the carpets or the rug. Let me duplicate the picture. Okay, you know what? At this point, I will leave the rug, the fabric here, and the fabric for the curtain. Essentially, they are the same. Just go to fabric and play with this because it's the same process. Let us go to a newer, the last master material, which is translucent. Actually, it's not this, it's from the same master material. I want to add the translucent node, and then we'll look at the master material for glass, right? And then we'll come back to the sofa because there's something we want to add to the first master material just to come up with something a little bit more interesting. So let's start with the glass, because right now, remember, we are using the glass from the engine folder, which is not, I mean, it's not bad. I want you guys to see how to make glass for yourselves and how to add a few more parameters. So I'm going to go to materials, master, emissive. I'm going to duplicate this and call it m underscore glass. So M stands for master material. So in that sense, we could have just named this M underscore base because anyway, you get the point. Going to expand this. Now for glass, there are quite a couple of settings we need to adjust. First is we leave the surface. We need to change opaque to translucent gray, and then shading model will be thin translucent. Now we're going to get some errors because we need to do some more adjustments, so that's fine. Under lighting mode, we're going to change this to surface forward shader. So the first error goes. And then this thin translucent is another node that we need to bring in. Thin translucent material output. So we bring that in and the errors go. I will let you know what this does. Now, because we've changed the lighting model to translucency, we no longer need emissive color. Glass will not emit lights. We can use normals. We no longer need metallic. Now, the nodes that are not connected, like these ones, to quickly remove them, we can just come to clean graph, clean up. So any node that does not connect to your master node here will disappear. Okay, we still need these transforms. And for the base color, all we need is just the base color. So I'm going to plug this in here. Again, clean graph, clean up. That gets rid of that. For the roughness, actually we're not going to use a texture, so we are just going to use the nodes, the constant vector or constant. Same for specular. So the glass is much more simplified. Again, clean up. I can delete this and bring this closer, because now it's only our normal map that will require what's going on, that will require this. Connect and save. Okay, so we have our base color, which I'm going to set it to black. We have our specular, which I'm going to set it to 1. Roughness going to be 0. Now a few more things to adjust to make this look like glass. We want to add opacity, so I'm going to right click, promote to parameter. It already has opacity. I'm going to leave it at 0. And one more change. If I click on the master nodes, scroll all the way down, we are looking for refraction method. Right now it's set to none. I want to change this to index of refraction. And I think before that, yes, this was disabled. We didn't have refraction enabled, so now we want to click on that, and that enables refraction. Again, right click, promote to parameter. I'll just leave it as that name. For now, this will be set to 1. And I know typically glass, if you're working in Corona Vary, glass is set to 1.5, water is 1.33, but you will see why I'm leaving it at 1 for now. Again, it's a parameter, so we can adjust that. And last but not least is this. So this tint translucent material node will help us with adding tints to the glass. So I'm going to make a constant 3 vector, held press 3 on my keyboard and left click, convert to parameter, tint. I will leave it as white as default. Plug this in here and move this to the color base color node or group rather. And let's see what we have. Save. Okay, so I'm going to right click, create material instance, mi_glass base. Okay, I'm going to move this to the material folder, and that will be the base of all our other material instances for glass. So where is it? Okay, so duplicate mi_window or glass pane or something. Let's just apply it first of all and see what happens. If your glass is going, if you can't apply it, don't forget that maybe you have T enabled. If you press T, you select through the glass and you can't even apply. So press T again so that you can select the glass and you can drag and drop. So drag and drop. Let's correct a few things. Now these reflections are not looking so good. Again, we are going to go back to our post-process volume. I'm not sure if I've shown you guys this before and or if I went back to change something, but with the post-process volume selected, let's go to reflections. We want to enable this drop down, and what we want to enable is high quality translucent reflection. So once I do that, reflections are much nicer all around. So again, in next week's class, when we get to rendering and animation, we'll look at all the settings to really make our project look very nice. So for now, let's just have that enabled. Press G to hide the icons, and let's go back to our glass material, or let's open it and see what the parameters to. Okay, we don't have any normal map right now, so this will not matter. we have the base color, which doesn't do much to be fair, because if you want to really change the color of the material is the tint, and I can make it reddish, whatever tint or color I want. So that's that. I'm going to cancel, leave it as black, oh actually not black, white or gray, yeah, white. Okay, we have roughness, so it makes the glass a little bit rough, almost like frosted glass, but not quite. Then specular, I set it to 0, no reflection at all. Then 1, maximum reflection. Okay, so opacity and IOR, I did not put them in groups, but I'm sure by now we know how to do that, so I'm going to leave that for you guys to arrange. Opacity just means, the glass is more or less opaque, so this is glass, but it's fully opaque, which doesn't look realistic, to be honest. So you hardly ever want to go to 1, but any other value in between should be fine. So I'm going to use 0.2, just so that it's not completely white, and we can see more of the reflections, maybe even 0.3. 0.25. Hey Sadiq, I'm glad you are still here. Hope you are enjoying this very long session. And then refraction is the one that is a bit tricky in Unreal Engine. If I set this to 1.5, you can see how it distorts the glass. Now this is how, for other objects, that can be a nice look, but for windows, you want to set this to 1 so that it doesn't look weird. I will make a copy, apply it here, maybe give it a nice tint. Okay, which one did I apply? 1 second, my system is froze for a second. Oh, okay, so I'm adjusting the wrong thing. Okay, so let me save this. This is the one, yeah, window 1. Okay, so give it a tint. And now if I play with the IOR refraction, you can bend the glass, so you can use this for other interesting looks. There are glasses that actually bend or refract light in different ways, so that's where. But typically for ArchViz, or for a typical glass, you want to leave it at as 1 or maybe 1.1 or 1.2, just to have a little bit of refraction essentially. Okay, so let me set this back to where we were. Good. So I'm going to use this for the doors. Just leave the name as window 1. So let me undo. So window 1, let me even go back. So this is glass, this is glass, and I've replaced those two. And one more area. Now just to be sure that this is the last place where this engine glass is, I will select the glass, right click, asset actions, select actors using this asset. So as you can see, it's only, if I press F to zoom, it's only zooming to this area. So the moment I replace this glass with window 2 or window 1, we have successfully removed all the glass from the engine folder. So again, I'm going to close or disable or turn off the engine content folder. I'm going to save all. So we're essentially done with glass. We've done the displacement. Now let's move on to translucent, and we are going to go back to our master material. For translucency, we need to add that in the subsurface color. Right now it's disabled because by default it will not be on or enabled until we either go to subsurface or two-sided foliage. But for now, let's just set up the connections or the nodes. For this, we want to use a, let me see. We can use just a base color, or in this case, we want to use a base texture. So let us do both as we've done for almost every other thing. I will make duplicates. So I'll duplicate this. Let me extend this here, double click. I can move this away. Okay, before I connect, let me just rename everything. So this will be SS is for subsurface multiplier. Default value should be 0 because I don't want any effect to happen once I enable it. Or actually, when I enable, okay, you know what? Let's see what happens. So I'll leave it as 0. Then this will be texture SS subsurface, and then we are multiplying. So okay, now this is subsurface color multiplier. Again, we have to give different names, and this will be SS subsurface texture multiplier or intensity. Okay, I believe. Okay, let's see what happens. So I'm going to connect this here. Yeah, have to rename this. Use SS subsurface texture. And we need to give all of these their own group. So 07 subsurface. 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 Awesome. Save. So I'll dock this here. Let's see if this works. I'm just going to make a material instance here, do a test. So the way this is right now, it's not letting light through because it's opaque. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to change the shading model from default to subsurface. Okay, nothing changes yet because I think I should have made the default value 1 so that once I enable this kicks in. But by typing 1, you see that, so that you see the effects better, let me make this, let me reduce the base color. Okay, so you will see that the light is going through. Where's the sunlight? Let me go back to G, fire orbit. Yes, one more thing I want us to adjust. For this curtain, I want it to be a two-sided material. So I'm just going to enable two-sided and tick this. So you see that's two-sided. Okay, let me move this over here. So you can see that the light goes through the curtain because of this subsurface. So that's essentially how it works. I can use a texture instead and then obviously increase the multiplier as well. Okay, so this can be used for things like translucent curtains, what else? Wax, anything that has like that light can go through, but you can't see through essentially. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Let me see if there's anything I'm missing. Okay, I know this is a test, right? But I'm just going to apply that to the rest. Can make a proper material and do so. All right, what next? Yes, for the sofas, we have this interesting look where let's grab a close up of the sofa. Okay, so it has this kind of weird, well, I won't say weird, interesting look where it's not like stain, but it's like I don't know what to call the name of the fabric, but it looks interesting. Now this wasn't done by texture. This was done by using two colors and combining them using a Lerp node, Lerp. So let me show you how that works and how we're going to bring that into our master material. So let me open our master material. I'll disconnect. Okay, you know what? I think is there need to make a copy so that we don't just scatter what we've done. I'm going to make a copy, duplicate, so that you see this in effect. And I'm going to apply it to this. Okay, so open. Now I'm going to disconnect the base node and just set up what I want to explain so that you see how it works. I'm going to have constant 3 vector, the second one. I'm going to bring in the Lerp node by pressing L, that's a shortcut. I'm going to give this a distinct color, red, blue, and then connect to the A and B, and then connect this to the base color. So what this is doing essentially is it's taking these two colors and is blending them with this alpha node, and that's why we have purple. If I bring this to 1, it's going to be all blue. If I bring this to 0, it's going to be all red. So essentially, black, which is 0, will give you red, and white, which is 1, will give you blue. Now, if you bring in a black and white texture that has a nice variation of black and white, you can get some interesting effects. And I have a texture for that. So if I go to, where did I put it? It's not walls, fabric. Yes, this grunge texture, T_grunge. If I bring this into our test master material, so let me open it. It has a nice mixture of black and white and grays. So if I connect this into the alpha, we get this nice effect or interesting looking effect. So this is essentially how I made the material for the sofa and the armchair. Okay, so to make this faster, I'm just going to copy this, bring this into our master material. Let me close this. I'm not saving. Let me reset so that we are neat and tidy. Save all. And now delete this one. Good. Now back in our master material. Now we have another potential issue. The way we had the first one where we could only have either the color or the texture. Now I want to bring in another set of rules how to plug this. We can use this switch node again, and when I connect it, I will try and explain the flow so that it makes sense. It might be a bit confusing right now, but I'm going to duplicate this, and this one will be called, instead of use base color texture, this will be called use, let's say, variation texture. So I'm going to connect it like this and explain. No, this will go to false and this will go to true, and then I'll connect it like this. So let me break it down. Okay, these two nodes, first of all, this is still going to be in the base color node. Yes, I'll adjust this one later. Now these two nodes or these two parameters by default are set to off. So let's look at the flow. Coming from here, it gets here to true, so it's not going to move forward because it's set to false. Now let's come back to these two. The base color false, so this will go is false, this will continue. So when we make a material instance, it will always still start with the base color. Now, if I enable this, it's going to change this to true. So everything beyond this is going to move forward, going to go to true. Because this is false, it will still move forward and connect. Now, the moment I enable this, it's going to set this to true. So everything false and behind won't move, won't go through. So that way we can have three options. I hope that makes sense. If not, just try as you redo it or repeat this process, it will click. All right. I'm going to convert this to parameters, everything here to parameters. Convert to parameter, color variation, light, convert to parameter, color variation, dark, and convert to parameter, what can I call this? Variation mask. This will always be black and white. I'm just going to use black or something dark, and then darker color. And when we make our material instance, we'll adjust from there. Save. So we've added this to our master material, and because of the way we set this up, it has not affected any material in our scene. So I'm going to go to materials. I'm going to let's see. Let me use a new one. Let me just use a new one. So duplicate mi_sofa. Okay, I'm going to apply it to all three. Now, as you can see, we have the two options here to either enable base color texture or use base variation texture. So I'm going to enable that. And yes, as usual, I knew I was going to forget to move this to the right group. So select all three. Okay, so you can only select multiples of the same node. So because these are both color nodes, I can change this to the right group, base color, this one too, base color, save. Okay, good. So essentially, I just want to make this lighter to kind of match what we have. So light, let me start with the dark color. So typically what I will do is once I have my dark color, copy it, paste it inside the light, and from there, just make it lighter. Okay, let me start with this one now. One more thing I should have done in the master material, and I hope you caught it. We need to add the UV adjustments here. So let me connect this over here. I'll double click on this and bring this back. So we have a clean node arrangement. Now I can increase the tiling. I think in the other one, 10 was a good number. Yeah, so I'm not going to spend too much time trying to refine this. I can do that after the class, but you get the whole idea. So that was for that. Save. Okay, actually, I can remove the specular since it's fabric. No, that shouldn't be that reflective. I think that's fine. Roughness can even go higher, 0.75. Okay, duplicate this. Armchair. apply to both. Tiling is way too much, so I'm going to set it back to 1. I think 1 was fine. And then I have the exact color I want to use. Hopefully you can see my screen. I'm going to use the hex RGB values instead. So this is the first one and the second one. Awesome. Okay, so this curtain, this rug, this lamp are all fabric materials. I will let you guys do that. One thing you need to do for this one is to enable two-sided material the way we did for this curtain material here, so that it's not looking empty like this. Also, we can just apply the same glass material to the bulb, and this can be metal. The body can be metal. Yeah, something like that. And I believe we are okay, done essentially with materials. If there's anything I've missed out or forgotten, we'll look at it tomorrow. That will be easy to fix. Okay, let me see where we are with today's lesson, what we have covered, and what is left. So we've looked at the material editor. We've created our master materials. We've created material instances. We've applied them to our projects. We've also made our light material. Okay, so let's have a look. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the level variant sets, TV material, post-process volume tweaks, and Quixel bridge. Okay, so the very last thing I want us to do, which will take just a few more minutes, is to give the environment something nice, give us something nice to look outside. So there's not just plain, boring emptiness. It's even worse with the night scene, it's just black. So let's quickly fix that and we'll call it a day. This has been a very long session. Thank you so much for hanging on and following along. All right, so let's do that quickly. Let's start with the night scene. Start with the night scene. Press G to hide. Okay, so I provided some materials or some textures rather, environments, which we'll use for the day and night scene. So let me just open it. It's a 360 image that I was able to get from a friend of mine. So this was the original image. I took this into, I'm trying to remember what AI tool I used to convert this to a night scene. I think it was just ChatGPT. I will find out. If you're interested, let me know. I'll try and get the workflow for tomorrow. Just can't remember what I did exactly. So in the same map, there's some slight adjustments, but I mean for what we need, it's perfect. And as you will see, I have original and I have the other one. The original one is quite sharp, and it just looked a bit too weird. So I just took it to Affinity or Photoshop and just made it slightly blurry. So if you want to use the sharp version or adjust the blurriness, you have access to the original texture. All right, so how do we do this? Simplest way is to bring in a sphere shape, make it bigger, apply the texture. So let's do that now. Let's ensure that we are in the night level so that whatever we bring in will just only be in the night level. Going to add a shape, sphere, bring this in. Now, one thing you want to take note of, like I said, whenever you bring in anything that is from the engine, or that was made inside Unreal Engine is always going to connect to the engine content folder or the the engine folder. So if I search for where the static mesh is for this sphere, you will see it takes us to the engine folder, and somewhere inside basic shapes we have this. Now I want to make some adjustments to this sphere, and if I do that, it's going to affect the one from the engine, and typically you don't want to adjust engine properties or engine assets. The best workflow is to copy this into your content browser as a copy, and then replace the static mesh, and then you can make any adjustments you want to make. So I'll go to my content browser, make a new folder for shapes. Again, search for the sphere, drag this, okay, yeah, drag this into shapes as a copy. So now we have our own shape that we can do anything we want to do with, and we'll simply replace it in this static mesh. Now when I search, it always goes to the shape we copied, and I can, as usual, or as always, turn off the engine content folder. Save. Now let's make our material, our environment material. I'm going to use the material for the light because we already set up some properties, like we've set the lit mode to unlit, so we only have the lighting information, which is what we want. Duplicate mi underscore env for environment, then night. Open, going to enable the texture, enable texture, drag in the night. You can see how nice it looks already. We will adjust the intensity if need be, but let's save for now. And let's search and apply it to the sphere. Okay, this is all looking good, but we have a minor problem. We want to expand, we want to make this sphere much bigger. So assume we go into the sphere, we see that we can't see anything because, like I said before, Unreal Engine only shows one mesh, or it only shows the front mesh, so the back mesh will not show. Now we have two options. We can go to the material, expand material property overrides, and enable two-sided, so that will show it both in and out. It's a legit fix, but I would say a better way is, because you want to, as much as possible, so in the grand scheme of things, this will not affect Unreal Engine, but you don't want to have a lot of meshes or materials that have this two-sided option enabled. It's just more things for Unreal Engine to think about and calculate, and we're trying to make this as optimized as possible. Now, if we were just working on an animation, that's fine because you're not doing anything in real time. So and it won't really add that much to your render time, not significantly anyway. It's not noticeable. But if you want to make an interactive project, especially when you don't know who's going to use it and how powerful the systems are, you don't want to give any opportunity for Unreal Engine to do any extra calculation or work. So the best way would be to flip the normals. Now, if we are planning ahead and this was your own project, you could have just done this in 3ds Max and brought in your own sphere with the normals flipped. But Unreal Engine has some nice modeling tools as well. So all the while we've been on selection mode. When we get to when we paint the grass, we're going to go to foliage mode. We also have landscape, but for now we want to go to modeling, and that will give us some options to flip the normal of this sphere. We'll find that in attributes, see normals here, and there should be another window. Let me see. So this is a funny thing about Unreal Engine sometimes. Let me go back to select, go back to modeling. With the sphere selected, go to attributes, click on normal. Okay. Let's see. What am I missing? Oh, okay. So it's actually here. Invert normals. So that will invert the normal. While I'm inside this sphere, if I put it back, nothing. If I invert, so it looks interesting. So once you are done, click on accept, and that's that. All we need to do now is move this sphere to the center of the world. That's 0, 0, and scale it up. Now before I scale, I'm going to enable the padlock so that if I scale in one axis, it scales in the rest, and 1000 seems to be a good value. Yeah, you can rotate this to any angle you want. I'll just leave it as 0. I think it looks good with the road, so that we just look out, and then I think this is a good position. Same way here as well. Not the best of, not the most inspiring of views, but yeah, it works for the purpose that we need. And I think the brightness is fine. Can make adjustments, but I think it's okay. So that is that. Go back to selection mode. We have this nice, outdoor look. Let's now do the same for the daytime. So now if I turn off the night level and turn on day, you see that we need to do for the day as well. I will simply duplicate this. So I'm going to put on the night level, ensure that the day level is enabled. Let me also go to the outliner and rename this to SM_ENV underscore night. Now, while the day level is enabled, that's because it's showing in blue highlighted. If I duplicate this, it's going to move into the day level. So I can turn off the night level, and I will just rename this to day. All I have to do now is duplicate the material, rename this to day as well, and change the textures. So search, drag and drop, and I need to apply it. Voila. So just to confirm, yep, that works nicely. Now that we are using this sphere as our environment, we no longer need the exponential height fog. Well, I mean, we can leave it. It's not really affecting the view, but let me scroll up. Yeah, it's not needed anymore. You can just get rid of it because you might want to move close to the window and look down, and you don't be seeing that kind of fog. And let me see. I think we can increase the brightness a little bit. Daytime. Usually in real photography, the outdoor would be slightly more exposed. So let me saturation, emissiveness 2. Oh no, this is saturation, sorry. Multiply 3, 2. I think 2 is fine. Yeah. And I think with this, we have come to the end of today's class. Wow, what a journey. As you can see, our project has come to life. Let me hit play. It is very good that I decided to test it out right now, and let me explain this wonderful phenomenon. Okay, every mesh that you bring in with Unreal Engine automatically comes with collision. So that's why the moment I hit play, it pushes us out beyond the sphere. So what we simply want to do is select the sphere. Let me press F10 to go back. Search for it, open it, collisions, remove, save, and now when I hit play, yes, looks good. Awesome. Awesome. I like this. Okay. So let's see again where we are or what we're going to cover tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to cover level variant sets. Essentially, we're going to set up the materials on the light fixture so that we can set it a mode where it's off, whereby we use the off material, and again set it to when we use the on material. So that will be used in blueprints in the last class, but we need to do some pre configurations now. Then next we're going to make a material texture for the TV. It's a little bit of a complicated process, but it's straightforward once I show you how it's done. And then we're going to look at post-process volume tweaks. Since we're almost done with the materials, now we can start to tweak the post-process volume, make things look better, increase the settings so that when we are doing our animation, it looks very good. And last but not least, we're going to look at the Quicksilver Bridge, which is a nice library of wonderful materials that we can use. You will appreciate it now that we've gone through making our own master material and material instances. There's a little bit of bad news concerning that. If, let's say, let me just let you know now. So if you've not had an Epic Games account before last year, November, if I'm not mistaken, those materials will not be free, unfortunately. Very sad. But if you've had an Epic Games account before then, again, I might be wrong, but you should have those materials free. I've had my Epic Games account for years now, and I've been using Quicksilver Bridge materials for a long time. So for those of us that do or did those materials, I mean, for now, are free. They might come back tomorrow and make it paid. So that's the more reason why I decided to show you how to make your materials from scratch. The Quicksilver materials are just a bonus, but it uses the same principles as what we've covered in today's class. So again, we'll go through that on tomorrow. And I mean, if you have to pay for them, there's some very good materials that will take a long time for you to make yourself. So, but with this, as you can see, we've been able to make them do a lot without, buying materials or, paying for other materials, which was the whole point of this class. So yes, I am done. Hope you enjoyed this session. It was quite long, but there was no getting around what we had to do essentially. And I'll see you guys tomorrow to round up this session, just so that I don't extend. We have fixed dates for the other sessions, and I would like to stick to that. So I'll see you guys tomorrow at 12 noon. I know that might not work for everyone, so if you miss the live class, you can always watch the replay, and then see you guys tomorrow and see you guys next week as well. All right.